Powered by Riverside FM.
On this episode of Bullet Time, we dispense justice in the streets of Megacity 1 with Rebellion Developments' 2003 shooter, Judge Dredd. Dredd vs. Death.
Look what this did to my desktop whenever I launched the game.
Wow, how come Mom lets you have two desktops?
I bought them with my own money, Mum. They're my desktops.
You have a disgusting amount of things on your desktop.
I don't really get bothered by it, so I just kind of let things accumulate.
Yep.
I was going to say, I need to give my desktop a bit of a tidy though, because I have folders for like current projects. I mean, granted, I got stuff on there which I haven't updated in years. Like, I've still got my folder on there for when we were running the tabletop games, just in case at some point I may...
Just in case you need it.
Yeah, and then...
Yeah. Yakuza 0 and 6 thoughts, I don't need that anymore. Video ideas, I've not looked at that notepad document in, like, over 2 years.
You genuinely don't need to have any more thoughts about Yakuza 0 nor 6. You can just clear your head off them.
I never will. I gotta keep updating. Even when the video is done, you've got to always be evolving and making your videos more outdated by having newer opinions on things you've already covered.
I always think about that in regards to, because I put out that video on Wario likes, and I was like, should I just kind of keep this video up to date whenever like a new one comes out, just so it's always like...
You're putting yourself on a perpetual treadmill.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I would be trapped, like, trying to just kind of keep this video constantly updated.
And your channel would be the Wario Likes channel.
No, exactly, which I've... people have kind of said that to me before, of just like, why don't you just make Wario videos? Because those are the ones that always do the
then you
best.
make something else, and then you get people in the comments going, go back to talking about Wario Likes.
Wario's all we want.
Yeah,
we only want to see Wario from you.
Because in my mind, you're the Wario guy, and I can't have that cognitive dissonance of you talking about something else.
Or if you're going to talk about something else, can you please do it through the like perspective or the funnel of Wario?
In the persona of Wario.
Oh, there we go.
I've done ultimatums in videos before, just kind of like say, okay, look, I'm not coming back to this well. And it doesn't matter because people will still ask, hey, I did it with the company Spiders, where I'm like, I've played 3 of their games. I think I'm done. I'm out. But whenever there's a new Spiders game, even though I said it in the video, it's like, are you gonna cover this? Like, the last video I made on this company was 4 or 5 years ago.
I think the most annoying one is Yeek, where anytime there's an update, it's just kind of like,
I didn't. But I never made an ultimatum in the video. It's like, I'm done with Yeek.
Sure.
I think it makes sense. People are like, oh, they might have salvaged it, or it's like, I'm just done. I'm out right now.
I want to say, Matty, by the way, I have just got the most horrible idea in my head of you just saying, can you just review other games as Wario? What if I did that for this game?
Talk
about on the podcast.
Do this entire podcast in the persona of Wario.
I don't think Wario would be pro-Justice Department.
No, I'm going to say there's no money in this game. So Wario would like not give like, so, I mean, Matt, okay. Okay, so first things first. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bullet Time, the video game podcast that analyzes the shooters that missed their marks. Back again on, I guess, the finale. Not that it's really a finale, because it was never really a series to begin with.
The impromptu mini-series.
Yeah, the impromptu police brutality mini-series that we've been looking at some games about, being a police officer, maybe on the wrong side of the law. And I think we've kind of hit our ultimatum with this one. This is kind of like, if we think of, Urban Chaos Riot Response and The Punisher as sort of speaking in conversation with one another of like, it's the world, it's the world of next Tuesday. This could happen, looking outside the window. This is, on the one side we have gangs running wild and the police being as bad as the gangs, but also we have like dirty vigilantes that people are treating like heroes. What is the end point of that? I guess arguably that could be the game that we're looking at today, which is from the year 2003, Judge Dredd : Dredd versus Death,
nice.
which for this pod, once again returning is YouTube's very own Mayor Dave the Orangutan, a snakerer.
I didn't get that deep in the lore.
I looked. Matt, did you want to tell us about Mayor? Do you know of Mayor Dave?
I do know that there was a Mayor Dave the Orangutan. I believe he was democratically elected.
Yeah. So I had a look on. the Wikipedia.
You say that?
Yeah.
Wait, sorry. You say that, so that means that was a noteworthy event that it was democratic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, in the comics, people, the denizens of Mega City 1 was so annoyed with the electoral process that, as a mass joke, they elected they elected Dave the Orangutan for mayor.
They did a genuine Count Bin face.
Exactly.
Yeah, they did. They genuinely did. Yeah. Which, I mean, if that's not democracy, I don't know what it is. I mean, granted, I don't know anything more than that. I literally just had a look at I was like, well, what's Snake's funny name going to be? So I had a look at supporting characters in the Judge Dredd and the moment that I saw... basically, my brain is, much like how the human brain is wired to like see shapes and patterns and stuff, mine's like that, but for noticing apes.
Yes,
so the moment I see like simians, chimpanzees, gorillas, my lock on, and I was like, Mayor Dave the Orangutan, let's put him in.
Meanwhile, I read about the lawgiver.
Okay.
I read the lore of the
yes. I'm excited to talk about the lawgiver.
I hope this means I got a suitably AP name for the podcast as well then.
So I wasn't sure what to come up with one for you. Because, I mean, so returning back from our successful Punisher episode that you heard a couple of weeks ago is Matty from the channel Stoked on YouTube. Resident, I guess at this point, you're slowly becoming Bullet Time's resident comics expert.
Oh, that I do like. That's very flattering. But thank you,
I would say so. You know more. Usually, I'm the person who's filling kind of the comic details. Not that we've done much comic. It has basically been the Punisher and this, which are being the.
Well, in that case, I have a 100% track record. So yeah, absolutely, you're right.
Well, yeah. Well, there we go. Exactly right. I'm trying to think. There aren't really a lot of FPS games.
Is there Rogue Trooper? That's a comic, right?
Third person, but it is, it's also Rebellion, isn't it? I think.
So was Punisher.
That's true. Yeah, no, so Punisher was third person. Rogue Trooper is also...
Yeah.
Rogue Trooper obviously related to this because not only are they both 2000 AD, but also both made by the same developer and from the same publisher as well, which I guess we'll get into a little bit of that when we talk about the history of this game. But the problem is that when I write my notes, I don't put any kind of structure for what we should do on Bullet Time. So I guess what I'm going to do first is say, Massey, welcome back. And this was a game that you suggested that we cover for the pod after we asked you on for the Punisher episode. So I suppose, why don't you go into a little bit of kind of what is your sort of familiarity in history with Dredd versus Death?
Okay. Wow. That's. I don't have those kind of notes either. No. So the reason, when you said you were doing Punisher, we were talking about, I'm talking about when we were talking about it, I was like, there's some really good stuff we can talk about. We can talk about the notion of Frank Castle and his jurisdiction, overstepping the boundaries of morality, his own personal moral code. There's all kinds of stuff we can dig into. So I was like, well, I guess the kind of European or British equivalent to that is Judge Dredd. And I know that there's a game. So I was like, it feels like it's a natural, like almost like you said in the intro, it's a natural progression. These two feel very closely related. And they're both from roughly the same era. They're both pulling from probably roughly the same pools of influences. And the way they come out is actually slightly different. But it just felt like a very natural progression. In terms of my personal connection to this game, this is a bit like Punisher as well. I had actually played this game before, unlike Punisher, but I'd never finished it. So again, this was another great opportunity to actually finish a game that I had never actually finished in order to make this podcast. So that was very cool for me.
Snake, you said something interesting about this game when we kind of got into covering it. Although I suppose I'll ask you kind of as well, which is that despite being a British drop T YouTuber, you haven't really you don't have much affinity for 2000 AD. Granted, neither do I really, but I guess it's just
Yeah, comics was never really, I was very, very casual comics. The only comic I read as a kid, besides like gaming mags, was the Simpsons comic. It was just kind of a genre that I was never especially into as a child.
Yeah.
Did you never have the Beano?
You're gonna hate this. My first run-in with Dredd was the Nostalgia Critic review of the
Oh god,
Sylvester Stallone Dredd movie.
I do kind of hate that. Yeah, that's.
I'm sorry. That's. That's.
If that's the truth, that's the truth. But
yeah,
it can't be helped. And then years go by, and the 2012 Dredd movie comes out, and I only saw it a month or two ago when it's like, okay, doing the episode, I better get some knowledge.
Had you not seen it before this year?
I hadn't. I'd had friends really push it, and I should have caught it sooner because it is a very, very good action.
Yeah, it's
film.
great, right? I mean, you've seen The Raid,
I
right?
watched. I've seen The Raid.
It came out the same year as The Raid.
Yeah.
It entered production first, however.
Right.
So
it
the
wasn't.
story.
It wasn't taking from The Raid. It's just kind of convergent
No,
evolution.
the story is, I don't know how true this is, but the rumor mill is that the script was leaked for Dredd, and The Raid went into production as a rip-off of Dredd, and so they had to rush production of Dredd in order to make sure their film got out first, so that people wouldn't say that it was a rip-off.
Bizarre.
I have not heard that.
That film does have interesting pre-pro history because he went through several drafts of like really big epic scope films of like of big kind of comic arcs, and then it just wound up being we got to do a day in the life film. And I honestly think
that's the best.
I kind of wish more stuff was kind of adapted that way. When after I watched that film, I was like, it was more interesting just do this. In Dredd's head was like nothing special.
No, the game kind of has a touch of that, which is though I guess
it does.
When we talk about the plot.
I think if we not to give everyone any spoilers, but when you skip to the end of the game, I wrote down in my notes that the 2012 Dredd film, the 1995 Judge Dredd film, and this game all end with Dredd just getting back on his motorbike and just going back to work.
Yeah, and he's like, well, back to work. Yeah, like, is that like how I suppose you've read more Dredd comics than either me or Snake combined. Does that also is that how the tone of the comics goes
Yes.
as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Like at the end of every big arc, quite often at the end of the epics, global nuclear destruction has been averted, and Dredd's like, oh well, on we go. Tomorrow's another day. Back on the bike. It's
he has
incredible.
A stiff upper lip that you'll never see.
The very definition of that stiff upper lip, and it's part of the sort of satire of the character in that he just sort of lacks any real basic humanity. He's not really, he's not look for the helpers. He's not one of those guys. There's a really great bit at the end of the first year of the Dredd comic in the late 70s. Dredd ends up being the Marshal of the Moon. So he gets a big promotion and he goes to be the and he's a big lawman on the moon, and he gets to wear a big cape, which makes less sense on the moon than anywhere else, but it's just the best.
Sure.
He oversees the Earth Olympics.
People see footage of his cape flapping and they're like, okay, that was filmed on Earth.
Yeah, that's it. That's how they prove.
Oh, they did that in slow motion to make it look like low gravity. Oh,
yeah. So he goes to the moon. He oversees the Olympics, which is being held on the moon. And there's some some stuff happens.
That's got to make the long jump easier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the shot put never lands. So at the end of this arc, he gets in they say, oh, your tenure on the moon's done. You got to come back to Earth. He lands in Mega City 1. He gets off the big, the transport ship. And as he's sort of coming down the gangplank, the last shot is him looking across the city. And he's like got his hands on his hips and he's like, finally I'm back in Mega City 1, with all of its 25 million, civilians, every one of them a potential criminal. It's time we got stuck back in and went back to work. And that's how it ends. Like every single person is a potential criminal. My job's just to figure out what they've done, and I'm going to start right now.
Which is funny considering that, so obviously the game that we're talking about adapts one of the stories from the comics, which is about, funnily enough, a comic that you have made a video about, which is also what makes
really
you,
serendipitous. I made a video a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you an expert on this game of that. So Dredd was kind of designed, as from what I understand, he was meant to be sort of a parody of like Dirty Harry, because it came out in like 76, so a few years after that film, which I like. Not that I watched. So the research I did for this was that I watched the both Judge Dredd films, which I'll go into in a minute. But I did get the time to get around to watching Dirty Harry, and I would kind of chalk that up to. And I've said this is name before, but I do very much struggle with watching any film that was made before Star Wars. There's a particular like pacing to them that my brain just can't particularly grok with. So I feel like I would just be kind of sitting there waiting for something exciting to happen, which is what's constantly happening in both the Dredd films, in both the Stallone one and the Carl Urban one.
And the comic. It isn't a slow burner.
And the comic.
Yeah. It isn't a slow burner.
But from what I understand was that, like, the original pitch for Dirty Harry and the way that they originally advertised it was that, like, it was almost kind of a death wish thing where this guy's been pushed over the edge. He's, like, as maniacal as the criminal that he's going after. You know, he's meant to be on the side of the law, but he's kind of, like, you know, got a pitch black heart to him.
Yes.
But then all the reviews that came out and all the kind of initial attention that it got, they completely changed the branding to he's a new kind of American action hero. He's the lawmaker in the style of like old-fashioned gunslingers. And like when you think of kind of like the late 70s and the sort of like move towards the right wing, which eventually kind of metastasizes in the likes of like Ronald Reagan and Thatch. Yeah. Like he was perfectly on the upswing for that. And so you go over on the other side of the Atlantic, we have all these guys, like all these kind of young punks, right, in 2000 AD, and they go, well, what's the step for, you know, what is the step after like Dirty Harry? Like, how bad can a cop get? And the initial idea that they have was like, well, why don't we just have a lawbringer who kind of splits the difference between that and like, the design inspiration for him was Frankenstein from Death Race 2000, the David Carradine character.
Yeah. There's a lot of Death Race influence in there. I think the design for Dredd is split over many things, and a bit like the design for and the world as well. You know, it's not it's lots of stuff.
I will say between the 2012 movie and this game, I got to see a lot of extremes of the franchise in set design, futurism, and tone. Yeah, and that's the best thing as well. The tone it swings wildly from one side to the next. It's very malleable between like what level of satire are we on? Are we being very grim or are we being ultra parodic?
Yeah, it's the Punisher thing of kind of like he had that Batman flexibility of you can pair him up with Spider-Man and give him a laser gun. Or you can go all in on the kind of like grim aspects of it. Partially something that, because when the 2012 film came out, like, so I was the opposite. So Snake, like, the 2012 film came out, but you didn't watch until recently. Meanwhile, I think I was 20 or 21 when that film came out, and I was like ultra film nerd. So it wasn't even Judge Dredd that was the thing that hooked me. It was from the writer of 28 Days Later,
Alex Garland, right? That's what
Alex
got you
Garland.
in.
I will watch anything that he makes. And the thing, like looking behind the scenes as well, is that apparently, like, even though he wrote it, there's like a lot of behind the scenes stuff that said that he directed most of it as well. It's just his name wasn't like.
Yeah, that's
like
what I always
took
thought.
over quite. Yeah, he took over a lot of the production from the named director, which is essentially then what gave him his in to do Ex Machina and Annihilation.
Yep.
Leading, of course, to this year's Civil War.
Yeah.
What's it a film about? Not really a civil war, but that kind of happened. Don't worry about it there. But yeah, rewatching that film, like, weirdly, because I hadn't seen the Stallone one all the way through before, but I was like, oh, this is fun. This is like, you know, Batman 89 came out and they were like, oh, we have to build like an elaborate world on a soundstage kind of thing, which I miss from films, but Stallone is only like maybe half tuned in. But I was like, oh, this is pulpy. The 2012 one, I was like, there's a bit of a weird energy to this. And like, I was like, I have a bit of a feeling about this and I'm going to Google it to see if I'm right. And I was. I forgot that this was this era of filmmaking where they basically set all sci-fi in Johannesburg in South Africa.
Oh, yeah.
And it's that thing where they don't really dress it up that much. They're basically like, oh yeah, we'll just go film some like slums and favelas.
Yeah, definitely that. Yeah.
Oh,
whack
this is
some
big
giant
concrete
blocks in the
blocks.
background. They might not even be whacked in. They might just be there.
yeah, like because it wasn't because it was District 9 that kind of pioneered. Well,
Yeah,
not so much
and
District
Chappie.
9, but the short film he did behind it,
Yeah.
Alive in Joburg, that guy made beforehand, which got that off the ground, but also just kind of created this thing of, ooh, why don't we just make a bunch of like dirty sci-fi movies and
Yeah.
like in South Africa? And it's like, oh, this is a bit gross, guys. Not sure how I feel about this. But if you do for a more realistic version of Dredd, then yeah, like that 2012 film definitely like grounds it more, but still has a lot of fun with it.
Yes,
they have a
definitely.
joke that makes everything slow motion. You
Yeah.
know? What's not to like about that?
Well, yeah, what's not to like? And I think, like Snake said, those two films really show the
Yes.
malleability of Judge Dredd, in that both of those films could be canon. They could be sequels to one another, and that would actually work within the constraints of the universe.
Oh,
You know-
I was thinking that like the Carl Urban one is like earlier on in the timeline.
It could
And-
be. You could
Yeah.
look at them like that, and that would actually work. They don't break any rules. You know, it is okay to go from this really fucking wacky 90s science fiction film to go to this very gritty 2010s science fiction film. There's room in the Dredd universe for both of those. And
Whereas
we could also have a
the
talking
game-
monkey as well.
Oh yes, that's very true. Whereas the game kind of veers more towards the Stallone one, but I would say is very much, and obviously feel free to correct me because I haven't read a ton of the comics, but it feels like way more in line with the tone of the 80s stuff.
Yeah, I think so. There's a big shift. There was a big shift in the comics in the 2000s to start doing very, very grim stories.
Yes.
The most famous of which is called Judge Dredd Origins, and it is essentially recontextualizing the history of the Judge Dredd universe and explaining basically how society got this bad. Because before,
Yes.
for like 30 years, they'd never really explained it. They were just like, this just happened in the future. There was a nuclear war, and then this happened, and then just terrible fascism. Whereas this story could sort of set out to do some underpinning and actually explain how this all happened. And yeah, that didn't come out until after this game. So there isn't really an underpinning. So again, the game doesn't really worry with that. So I think it's probably going on the fact of more people in the world probably knew Judge Dredd via that film than would have from a pokey little comic which you can only actually buy in corner shops in England.
Yeah.
So I think that's
The
why
funny thing
they
I
do
found,
that.
because
Yeah.
the funny thing I found being an outsider, and this lore surprised me, and I loved it, and it immediately gave me this is the worst comparison ever, I'm sorry, but it immediately made me think, man, this is like EastEnders, is that from the first run till now, Dredd has been the same character aging in real time and is
Yes.
currently in his 80s or 90s.
Yes.
But has been rejuvenated, so he can still go.
Yeah, just about. He's probably got the body of like a man in his late 40s. I think he's been regenerated twice, but he is still an 80-year-old man. Which is great because it means he's been on the beat for like 50, 60 years of his life, which is why he's now just such a horribly browbeaten man, because he's seen it all. And he's one of those people, a bit like a hard-boiled detective, I'm getting too old for this shit. This guy is literally way too old for this shit. He's got no empathy
one
left
else can
whatsoever.
complain as much as he
Yeah,
could.
yeah.
No.
Granted, he doesn't strike me as a complainy guy. Granted, I don't know how he is in his 80s and 90s, but you look at the film, you look at the game, and you think, this guy lives for nothing but this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, which is weird because you hear his voice, or at least I hear his voice, and I think he's like a Wolverine, like gruff guy with a heart of gold type.
Right.
Not really. He's a job's worth essentially.
Absolutely,
Like
yeah.
he loves being a police officer.
He loves being a copper.
To kind of get into the game, a bit,
Yeah.
especially with the name, there are sequences in the game where you can rescue people and move in safety, and the response which always just kind of stuck out to me, which I guess is for the comic readers or just for someone, is they'll say, "Oh, I had you wrong, Dredd," or like, "You're a better man
You're
than
all right."
we knew," and it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, I guess I don't think I don't know what Dredd gets out of that, but sure, I'm playing him. I'm doing all right. I'm saving you.
Yeah.
So I do have to ask now that you've popped the cork on the game talk, which is, and be honest, How many fat people did you arrest during your playtime of Dredd versus Dev?
Is being fat a crime?
Yeah, you can arrest people for being fat.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can literally arrest people for whatever you want.
Does it come up on
I didn't know that.
screens?
I genuinely thought I had to have reason.
Yeah. No. I mean, you do lose meter if you do it too much, but you can arrest fat people, and it's kind of like for like filling up public spaces or something. It's like a really shit. It's like a Frankie Boyle joke. Is essentially what you can fucking arrest.
I don't know how deep that is.
I gotta say, it does reflect poorly on me, but I did laugh at the really big ones who had a little wheel.
The little wheel.
I found that.
Yeah. So in universe, they are called the fatties, which isn't a very good joke. Like, it's a bit cruel.
No.
But
that is very like 80s British crass joke. Is just what's the joke? He's just fat.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing in the law where they're called the League of Fatties, because essentially in the Judge Dredd future, I mean, there's a lot to go into here, but essentially all kind of work, because people have been emancipated from work. Automation, robots, AI has meant that nobody has to do anything, so nobody does anything. And actually, that's the reason there's so much crime. It's not because people are poor.
Because everyone's bored.
They're just terribly bored.
There's a very grim, like, joke on Star Trek where we're post-scarcity, so
exactly
we're all
that.
brilliant.
It is a post-scarcity world. And actually, the very first few issues of the comic actually shows Megacity 1 is actually a bit of a utopia. And all the crimes are like silly crimes. No one's like robbing and murdering and doing anything like this. They're just like making wacky inventions and riding them down the motorways and accidentally killing people while doing it. Like, it's all these like silly things. But no one has any agency. So like things like graffiti and extreme sports and stuff like this are what people put their time into, and they're publicly endangering people, so it becomes illegal. But one of the things is people basically take the agency just to choose to become insanely fat, because again, there's no reason not to stop eating. Then there's a huge war, and everybody has to be put on rations, but the fatties refuse to obey rationing. So then there's a whole arc where they're like breaking into the food shops, and they're like riding alongside food cargo trucks, like pulling them over and like eating all the food. So there's a whole thing. So the fact that that's in there is just a weird tiny nod to a whole thing in the law, like a whole ass arc in the law of fat people with tiny little wheels for their tummies.
There's a tone to like 80s British side, like that Red Dwarf and like 40K with the
God, it's kind of exactly that.
I did not expect such a developed reason for the fat people. I did not expect that to be a nod to the audience, like a wink to the audience.
Yep, that's it. So, but it's a bad thing. Go on, James.
Oh, I was going to say, it's just that kind of like tongue-in-cheek sort of anarchic kind of like middle, like kind of two fingers to everybody's sort of approach is kind of, what I think of like in 2000 AD in my head, like that's kind of what I think of. This game does kind of channel in a kind of a fun way, but say peace.
Yeah, definitely. So there's like a bit of body shaming there because it's the 80s, and so like you kind of go, you know what, that was bad. But also within it, there is also this really interesting little critique where you've got like the politics of the body, and you've got like just layered slightly within that the subtext of it being illegal to be fat, or it being illegal to take up too much space. And so you can actually extract tiny little bits about that. So after this big event where all the fat people steal all the food, they end up being rounded up and they get put into a special like habilitation block. And it's just basically like we lock all the fatties together. And that way they can be all together.
Fat camp.
Fat camp. Yeah. And so like there is a dark humor to it. It isn't just fat people are funny. It isn't just body shaming. It's actually saying something else as well about the way the state treats people for their choices.
And this was in an 80s arc before you had like, I remember it in growing up in the 2010s, like there were so many news reports on the obesity epidemic.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they actually were ahead of that.
Yeah. God, I know this is like really bad to bring up, but my favorite joke I've ever written was a fat joke, which was just, we've had an obesity epidemic ever since we stopped calling big lads jolly. And I've always just liked that sentence.
Oh.
It stuck with me.
That's fair. To be honest, I thought it was the thing that you said about Well, I guess at this point he's a disgraced YouTuber, so could we mention mention his name? Actually, we better not, just in case he ever comes on in case I ever get desperate enough that I want to invite him on the
disgraced
podcast.
YouTubers. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I hope
this guy is a disgraced YouTuber. Famously, you know how there's the Madden curse, which is like if you're on the cover of Madden Football, usually your career goes like down the tubes. There's also the Game Awards curse, which is if you win Content Creator of the Year. Yeah, no, now you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Snake.
I was going through every
You were going through the Rolodex of all the disgraced YouTubers. Literally
it's
a list in the
Rolodex.
list in the thousands of disgraced YouTubers. But, yeah. No, I always think of the thing that you say about the fact that him sitting on the fence created the horseshoe. But there we go.
Wasn't that Swede who said that?
Oh, actually, yeah, maybe it might have been.
Swede made that joke, which is a better fat joke than I've ever made.
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed Fat Joke Corner of this.
Fat Joke Corner.
Because
so on the notion of arresting people, I do want to say there's actually something really cool here. I actually think this is probably the key USP of the game is arresting people, because you can kill anybody, but the game says it would really prefer if you arrested people. It's the first tutorial is learning how to arrest, and yet, like James said, you can arrest anybody at any time. If you just walk up to a civilian, you can just push the intimidate button, whatever it is, and Dredd's like, get down, creep. And then you can just arrest them. You don't have to see them commit a crime. And it will just randomly, I think what it does is, I reckon there's just like a CSV file. And it just randomly pulls a string. And it will just be, I've had like owning a goldfish without a license. It just comes up on screen. And it will just be like silly, ludicrous things that, essentially, Dredd's there's no burden of proof here. Dredd's just, he can arrest people. And so he does. Because like you said, he's a jobsworth. He actually loves his job so much, he doesn't even need for people to have committed a crime. He'll just arrest them. Yeah. And there's something really smart. And I think this is the smartest this game ever really gets.
Yes. Yeah.
There's something very clever there, something very cool, where you're a game where you are a copper and the burden of proof doesn't even enter into consideration.
Okay, you do lose your law meter, but I'd never worked out how, so you're scored in this game, and I genuinely wonder what is the biggest deciding factor in, like, is it arrest? Because it gives you a tally of how many total years you put people away.
Because usually if you've had a good run, you'll always rack up over 1,000 years of prison sentences. Mm-hmm. I had one where I got 4,500 years of prison sentences.
I'm going through my footage now to try and see what my biggest thing was, because I started getting in the bound. I got 3,248 years and 41 arrests. 510. Well, I was slacking that level.
That might have been a level where that could have been a zombie level, where you couldn't really arrest anybody. See, the thing is that like I was about to segue into something about what the zombie levels reminded me of, but I'm trying to think of like a good sort of place to kind of dig in. So one thing I would say that's interesting about this, and we kind of like touched upon it a little bit, saying about how flexible Dredd was earlier. Mm-hmm. This is the last Judge Dredd game. Yeah. Well, so
with the exception of mobile games, there are like 2 or 3 mobile games.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I bemoaned on the Punisher episode. I'd have loved an open world Punisher game. Now it's like I'd prefer an open world Dredd game.
It is. Largely, I pretty much despise the rise of open world games because they're just shoehorning an IP into the format that doesn't necessarily fit. But my God, would this fit?
Oh yeah,
I'm talking like in an idealized they apply the IP in an intelligent way. But if it was just crappy stock open world game, none of that. But it's like Dredd just being able to just go and do arrests. Yeah, that'll be fun.
You get a call over the radio. There's something going down at I don't know, Barry Gibson block, and you've got to get on your motorbike, ride over the big flyover motorways, get over there, make some arrests. Like it's perfect. Like it would be awesome. Just a tiny section of the city.
Do you know who would be the perfect developer for like if they did a new Judge Dredd game? Which is funny because then I'll segue into sort of my other point about this, but like Teon, who did RoboCop Rogue City and Resistance, but the RoboCop game especially in regards to like how that splits the difference between your linear style, they've taken over the the TV station. Get in there, Dredd, or like they're down in the sewers. Go in there and smoke them out, Dredd, kind of thing. But then also have these very small open world sections where you can do some side missions, like there's a guy swelling slow-mo around the corner, Dredd, but then also just randomly arrest people. But yeah, as you said, also have like a little motorbike section.
Yeah.
The Rogue City as well, which I don't know if he'll do it on the pod at some point, but it is like a weirdly good fit for bullet time. But that game, it has the RoboCop gun in it, which I can't remember the name of it, but that has its own separate upgrade tree. And like that would be such a perfect fit for the lawgiver of just like you could go in and like you could upgrade hot shot, or you could upgrade like rubber bullets and stuff like that. I think they would be weirdly in the zone for that.
Yeah.
Now, the odd thing is that there is also a developer that would also be a very good fit for this that still exists that's called Rebellion, who are the people who made this game. And it's one of those things that's like, Rebellion, I think we've maybe mentioned in passing a couple of times on the pod. Snake, the only thing that's mostly relevant to when you were on was that they nearly bought Free Radical Design when they went into administration, but then the Germans, the Crytek swooped in and like made a better deal for them. But especially after playing this, especially the zombie levels, I was like, well, even like kind of the art design, I was like, this is very time splitters.
Yeah, very time splitters. Yeah.
Obviously, we can't look into an alternate reality, but
sure,
you can just thinking about it on a logical level, Rebellion probably would have been a better fit for these guys. They probably could have gotten right to work on a project that suited their sensibilities a lot more. Rebellion
is such an interesting developer in that, like, they're the classic story. Well, no, it's so British kind of development is odd. Is that like it's either people who were making games in the 80s for the micro in their bedroom who have since gone on to become like established AA hitters like Codemasters, Frontier, Climax, like a lot of the Guildford-based studios. Rebellion's a little bit later. They're two brothers who started it, and essentially like they were at the University of Oxford in 1992 when they put this studio together. And the thing that they're interested in is like the burgeoning era of like polygonal games. And the first game that they put out for the Atari Jaguar is one's called Checkered Flag, which is a racing game, but maybe the more important one is Alien vs. Predator, which the year after Doom came out, 1994, it's like, hey, we're the guys who have cracked doing a console FPS game before anybody else. But not only that, but it's like based on, two of the biggest franchises in film. And also this kind of burgeoning comic book thing of, because it was Dark Horse, right, that kind of like did the Alien vs. Predator concept after Predator 2, right? Because Predator 2 came out and they have like a xenomorph skull in that film. If you like,
I think
this Predator met the alien.
I want to say the Alien vs. Predator comic is 1989.
Okay.
I don't know why. Like that's not based on anything. That's gut feel. And then Predator 2 is I think 91 or 92. So I think the comic slightly predates the xenomorph skull. Could be wrong. Happy to be wrong because I've not looked this up, but that's kind of what I'm feeling.
But it's one of those things that it makes sense because like Fox owns both IPs, so it's just sort of like, hey, why don't we just kind of smash these action figures together?
Yeah, it's a very smart move. I think it worked. It worked. It continues to work. It's to the point where I think everybody's happy with those two universes coexisting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rebellion's like, so not only do they make their mark in regards to making one of the first console FPS games, but Alien vs. Predator just kind of comes their calling card in a weird way of that they've made 3 Alien vs. Predator games.
Yeah, they kept doing it, didn't they?
Yeah, so they made one in 1994, one in 1999, the era of like Half-Life, and then one in 2010, the era of Call of Duty. So you see basically the same concept done 3 times with 3 different levels of technology and 3 different kind of identities of FPS, which is so interesting.
Yeah. And that middle one as well, I feel like that is a PC game, isn't it? I think the first one's a Jaguar game. The second one's the second one is the Sierra published, isn't it?
That's
And
correct.
It's very Sierra 1999 PC FPS feeling. I don't know if there's a console port, but I bet it would have sucked. Like, it really relies on being on the PC. And then that third one is very much an Xbox 360 game.
PS1 game, so I might
Resurrection.
be mixing it up. Or just,
You're thinking of Resurrection, which we talked
I'm
about.
totally off the mark. Yeah.
We talked about that on the Right Response episode because that was the game that invented the
Dual stick.
twin stick control scheme we just use for FPS games now, which was made by Argonaut, who obviously then went on to do Right Response. So
there you go.
There you go.
It's all connected.
But that's the magic web of bullet time, is how all these things connect. But like Rebellion is just like this kind of consummate just sort of developer publisher who have, as kind of UK studios then grew and went bust, like Rebellion have always just kind of stayed around. And it's mostly been down to the luck of working with a lot of big IPs. Having their own engine also helps. We mentioned the 1999 Alien vs. Predator. That was the first project that they made with the Azura engine, which they used on this game, but continue to use and upgrade all the way to today with the Sniper Elite games.
Wow.
The latest Sniper is made in that engine, but they also license that engine out for a ton of other projects, including for Call of Duty and for Battlefront.
Which
like,
probably
all
means
those
they
kind of
don't-
PSPs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It supports the fact they
That's
don't
a
have to
lifespan
chuck
to
games
rivalry.
out all the time.
Yeah. So they're just a developer who have like, hey, we can always consistently get work. And the weirdest thing, like looking at this game and looking at the credits, so the studio was founded by Jason and Chris Kingsley, brothers, still there, still creative directors on all these games. And there have been people who have worked at Rebellion going all the way back to Dredd versus Death, who are still there working on the Sniper Elite games. So they just absolutely adore sticking around at Rebellion. But they have these like solid kind of like, you know, we can do games for other people, but hey, why don't we also have our own IPs?
Yeah.
Which is how, in the early 2000s, they buy 2000 AD.
Yeah.
Not license it, literally just, hey, this comic company is struggling, we really like their stuff, and we were going to license these IPs from them, but we actually have the cash to just buy it outright.
Yeah. I don't know how true this is, but I remember reading that the reason they bought 2000 AD was because they wanted to make games based on the 2000 AD IP. They approached, I can't remember the name of the company that used to own them. But anyway, they approached them, said how much to license these characters. They went away, thought about it, and then went, actually, we could just buy the whole business. A bit like how, if you know the video One by Metallica, uses clips from that Trumbo film, Johnny Got His Gun. Apparently that was the same
whole
thing.
Music video is based on that film.
Yeah. So apparently Metallica, same thing. They approached the company who held the rights, said how much is it to license it, and then they realized how much they'd pay out on licensing if it was played like 1,000 times on MTV. It would actually just be cheaper to buy the entire film. So they still own the rights to that film. So if you buy the Criterion collection of that, your money's going into James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich's pockets.
Oh no! If that funds Lars cracking down on streaming services, if you watch the Trumbo
on that one Trumbo film that he owns, So I think it is. I don't know if this is true, but I think I remember reading that basically it's the same thing. They were like, we can just buy the whole company. And what is also very good from my angle as a comic fan, I've been reading 2000 AD since I was about 8 years old, and when a foreign company buys the thing that you like, there's always a fear that things are going to change, that things the status quo is going to be shaken up because these new owners want to put their stamp on it. They want to, but the Kingsleys have done nothing. They recognize that everybody who was there knew what they were doing. They just needed financial aid. And so they have never stepped in. They've never had any editorial say. They could, but they just refused because they were like, we want to just keep reading it. We want to make sure the right people are in the right place, and they respect it. And it's very, very refreshing because they could have had a completely different, approach. And I madly respect what they've done there.
That is ideal because there's also that worry when fans take over something because
that's
like
true. Yeah.
What does a fan see in it? It's like, oh no, is it just going to become what you like in this?
Yeah.
But they did the right thing, boy, and just left it to operate.
They're a company but it's funny because I would say that like the tone of 2000 AD was already kind of a perfect fit for Rebellion, considering Alien versus Predator and some of the other kind of brick games that they had made beforehand, all very much like they were already on the wavelength for 2000 AD, probably because, as you said, Matty, they were already reading it at that point anyways. That was all kind of feeding in. So, yeah, so when they bought it, it was just kind of a perfect bit of serendipity. And then it then becomes the thing of, oh yeah, they were basically kind of the perfect developer for this game as well. They already had that sort of kind of like 80s anarchic cynicism which you need for something like Judge Dredd, which I don't know, it's funny, like the Stallone film doesn't quite you see hints of it, like you see it like trying to fight out as much as possible. And then with the Alex Garland one, it's kind of there, but it's also under a lot of layers of, well, I want this to feel like modern day. I want this to kind of like reference where we are in the world. And you don't quite get that too much. But I would say that this game is like, as an adaptation of Judge Dredd, is like spot on.
Yes, it's really good. And we'll get more into the story, I'm sure. But to look at those three things as Dredd adaptations, when I think about Dredd and when I talk about Dredd, the thing I talk about is that, like you were saying, it's anarchic and it's very, very critical of the police. It's very skeptical about power systems and all these things are baked into the world. But the Alex Garland film doesn't actually do any of that, really. It's a couple of bits where you're like, oh, Dredd seems like a bit of a hardline cop, but he doesn't feel like a bad guy. He doesn't feel like a villain.
No.
It never really has time for any big social commentary. You get maybe one moment where he saves a woman at the start of the film, and then she terrifiedly just kind of has to say, oh, thanks for saving me, which isn't wrong to do when someone saves your life, but also she really didn't express much concern over whether she lived or died. It was just, she was just in the way.
He arrests
He didn't kill those kids.
Someone's head.
There's that one bit where he arrests the homeless guy, and I think that's the most hardline thing you see Dredd do in that film. It's like a homeless dude, and he's like, you better not be here when I come back. And then he's like, right, that's it, you're off to the ISO cubes.
Well, no, it's not even that. The guy, so they go back towards the front door, and that's when they shut the shutters for
and
the
he gets
bomb
crushed
test.
to death, but...
Yeah, he gets bought.
It's a weird setup and payoff gag, but it also kind of makes Dredd look a bit more reasonable because, okay, you're a hardline, you will fight crime, but then he sees a guy loitering and still has enough presence of mind to go, no, we've got bigger fish to fry, and show some leniency and go, right, you better not be there. He's not like, I'm gonna catch you, punk. It's like, hey, just don't do it where I can see it.
And when the kids pull guns on him later on, he goes, listen, there's two ways that this can go. Either you go to juvie or I shoot you. Like, to play out. And what he then eventually does, he just stuns them. Like, he's like, I'm not going to, go any further than that.
I will say for the adaptations I, experienced, which is this game and, the 2012 movie, one thing I appreciated about both adaptations, they waste absolutely no time.
Nope.
Like, they just kind of, you learn how this universe works by just watching it. There's no like, hey, I'm going to explain the judge system. Yeah. Hey, I'm going to explain this. I'm going to explain. It's just like, you're going to learn about this world by seeing how it operates firsthand with absolutely no waste. Like, hey, Dredd, look at that protest. Go arrest them. And immediately you know exactly the state of the world.
Yeah,
they only need to do
perfect opening.
They only need to say four things, which is, one, it's post-apocalypse. Everything outside is what do they call it? Like the endless waste?
The cursed earth.
Or the wasted... Or like,
the cursed
earth.
Yeah.
And everybody else lives inside Mega City 1. Number 2, everything's been automated, so everyone's so bored that they now commit crimes. Fair enough. Number 3, because of this, we've now condensed the judge, jury, and execution system into the judges. And that's who Judge Dredd is. He not only dispenses the law, but then he then passes on whether somebody, goes to jail or is executed for committing crimes. That is all you need to, literally those are the only things you need to explain to somebody to get them up to speed on Judge Dredd. The game does it, both films do it, and you're like, okay, I totally get it. I am locked in. I don't need to know anything else. That's great.
Oh, there's also the thing in the 2012 movie with mutants and psychics.
Yeah, they do a good job of bringing that in.
That's a whole deal, but it's just, there's a psychic, and, assuming you're not a curmudgeon and can understand that this is a wider universe, why aren't they explaining the psychics? No, there's just psychics, fucking get on with it.
Yeah, she lived next to a nuclear plant.
Post-apocalyptic radiation something. That's it, isn't it? Like this hand waved away, which is brilliant because actually that's extremely Judge Dreddy as well. There's loads of weird stuff that's never
Yeah.
explained. And I'm a big
Judge
fan
Dredd
of the
doesn't
kind
really
of
give
science
a shit
fiction.
about anything
Yes.
that isn't to do with the law.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah. I'm a big fan of
give a
science
fuck.
fiction that basically refuses to explain how things work as well. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
I don't need to know how
like
the warp drive in Star Trek works. I just need to know that it does.
Yeah. And I even kind of like in Dredd's case and the what's it called? The Stallone movie had an element of this, of just like when his clone brother goes to meet Ian Dury and he goes, "Oh, is that one of the ABC Warriors?"
Yeah.
And I look it up and it's like, that wasn't even anything to do, like it kind of crosses over with Dredd a little bit.
Yeah,
but
but
that
it's
was
this
just
whole
like,
last thing.
yeah, it's just another story in that world of just like, they're called the ABC Warriors because they were robots that were able to survive atomic, biological, and chemical attacks. So they're just like, incredibly hard to kill. And again, like the game has elements of that, of just, you see all these tangents of other worlds just going on in regards to like,
And
one of the first things that happens after the tutorial is like outside of the halls of justice, you're doing day in the life stuff.
yeah.
And then you're just attacked by vampires. It's
Yeah.
like, cool. That's just something that happens at the world of Judge Dredd. Fair enough.
Like 5 minutes in, the plot jump shoot, and the plot is vampires.
Yeah.
What's
You're
this-
just on the beat, and then it's like, oh, by the way, Dredd, vampires.
Yeah.
yeah,
and it-
that's the
Well,
best thing. I think.
it's stop all the protesters, then stop the
Bank
graffiti
robbery.
artists. Oh, by the way, a bank's being robbed, so stop there. And now there's vampires.
Yeah, and it's just the best.
like,
It's just
all in
it's
less
just
than 10
perfect.
minutes.
Yeah, I absolutely love
perfect.
that. On the you mentioned about the ABC Warrior. What I really love about this is because that film does a really good job of balancing the tone really well. But the ABC Warrior is based on a character whose name is Joe Pineapples, and I just think they deliberately left that out because they knew that would undermine even the silly tone that they had achieved in that film. Of going, oh, is that one of them Joe Pineapples robots?
Whereas if it was in this game, they would have called it Joe Pineapples instead. But like when you arrest people, the randomly generated names for those, I think, are kind of like on the silly side from what I
Yeah. One thing I did notice, and I think this is really good, is the first level, absolutely best opening ever, is you're arresting protesters who are they are protesting because they want democracy. So that's the best thing ever. They're pro-democracy protesters, and you're arresting them, and it comes up on screen saying Section 5 public order offence, which is actually a real law. That's a real law. That's like inciting hatred. That's like antisocial behaviour. So again, they could have put anything there, but they've put in a real law. So in the future, asking for democracy, using your democratically fought for right for protest, for democracy, it's just a crime. It's like, no, this is
Which
an
has been a
incitement
recent
for hatred.
concern in England.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, very topical.
We have slowly moved towards that now, unfortunately. It's just fucking
And-
terrifying.
And it's a great opener because you get it. You're not killing them, but you're also just refusing to accept their right to protest. So it just sets the tone so perfectly well. Then you said, you go arrest graffiti artists, and that's fine. And then the best thing is then there's just fucking vampires.
Yeah, just vampires turn up and they just start killing
They
people.
just start
en masse.
wailing on people, yeah. And then you go, this is great because now you've got it gives you that, now you can use the gun. You don't have to worry about any of the moral, like, grey areas. No, these are vampires. You can't arrest them. You've done the arresting bit. You've learnt the arresting mechanic.
The first 5 to 10 minutes of this game has more escalation than some full titles
Yeah.
do.
Oh,
You
yeah.
just
Yeah.
go from that to that, and there's no time wasted.
It's very PS2 in a way. And Snick, I want to bring up something that you said to me on the DMs when we were talking about this game, which was that in your mind, you kind of thought that this was like, quote, like the perfect sort of bullet time game.
I know it's funny because I did immediately think, like, to you, bullet time is about more the 2005 to 2010 Xbox 360 generation era, but this was that kind of game in the preview of the PS2 gen.
It was
like the kind of the shovelware, but I find more experimental. Like, this was, I'll say this, playing this game gave me nostalgia, but for a game I never played because it was so evocative of, this is a 2003 PC, like, shovelware is too harsh a term, middleware, AA, whatever you want to call it, this was not like a frontline hitter, but this is a perfectly competent IP game.
Do you know how I would describe this game? Is that, and again, when I found out that this was made on their own engine, I was kind of like, well, that makes sense. But in my mind, I was like, oh, this is like when they used to make those Star Wars games and Star Trek games in the Unreal Engine. Like, this feels like, hey, we've licensed the Doom engine to try and like push it as far as it can in regards to, well, we've added like an arrest system and like gore and stuff like that, but you are still playing it kind of like Quake 2 for all intents and purposes. And like, that is such a thing of just kind of, and again, like in regards to sort of the identities of Bullet Time, there is the 360 era going sort of right at the beginning of the PS4 era, which funnily enough, a game that we will be covering soon very much kind of sums up that era of Bullet Time. But you are absolutely right in regards to PS2, like that sort of PS2 era where Halo has been kind of figured out and everybody wants to play in the sandbox of console FPS stuff. This is a perfect fit for that. To the extent of the game that I kept thinking of when I was playing this was Time Splitters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's so Time Splitters-y.
Yeah,
there is a funny thing where you can play that and play this, and yeah, there is some weird commonalities in both being British shooters. They both kind of feel they have this. We mentioned it earlier with Rebellion could have picked it up, but this game was using the same kind of unlock system.
Yes,
that
yeah.
Time Splitters
Unlocking
was, which is-
multiplayer skins, at the end of the levels.
Yeah. And you get new multiplayer maps, and then you unlock an arcade map, and then what happens if you get the max rank on an arcade map, you unlock a cheat, and it's like, oh, that's fun. I can mirror the world now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There's, I think there's one multiplayer, one of the arcade levels where you're running around and you've got to shoot tiny little robots. And I was like, this is just shooting the monkeys in Time Splitters. This is just exactly the monkey level. And I love it. Like, I'm not even mad. Like, this is great. This is absolutely brilliant. I love the fact they've got, it's era specific.
You're playing as other characters as well that have tiny little quirks. Like if you're playing as someone who isn't a judge, if you pick up a lawgiver and pull the trigger, the gun will just explode.
Yes.
Just like I learned that rule watching the movie. Is like the moment I realized, I'm playing as a gangster. Oh, there are judges on this stage. I need to get my hands on one. I need to see.
I love that they went with stylized art style. They didn't go for a kind of
the
realistic,
art style in this.
very Time Splitters. Hand keyframed animations. You can kind of spot that stuff. This isn't motion captured. This is keyframed, and it just gives it that quality. That it feels tight. Maybe that's a British shooter vibe because this and Time Splitters, they just feel like peas in a pod.
No, like
also talking about like the love of seeing a soundstage earlier. The big like skybox JPEG,
big JPEGs,
the images. I loved looking at those. They were not meant to be seen in modern resolution, but they look great.
Yeah, and there's just enough level geometry that your brain is kind of fooled for a second, and you're like, actually, how far back does the level geometry go? Like where does the geometry stop and the skyboxes begin? My brain was like having a hard time on some of these city levels. I was like, they're nailing the environmental design here. This is really good.
Oh yeah. If you played this on a CRT, it would just blend. Like, you wouldn't see the seams. It would work really well. And again, to kind of go back to this, like, so with Time Splitters, obviously, it was all Carl Hilton. He was the art lead on it, but he kind of looked at stuff like Jamie Hewitt in regard to like character proportions. For the most part, like the look of the characters in this are very much based on what's the name of the artist that created Carlos Ezquerra?
Ezquerra, right?
Yeah, like the original Dredd artist. Yep. And they are working in that in regards to the textures have literal like hand-drawn inclines on it for like, people's chins and kind of like details and whatever.
Dredd's chin looks like rice pudding in a sock.
That chin was not meant to be seen in modern resolutions.
No. But you could imagine, like, how, because, like, Microids did that re-release of 13, the Ubisoft game, which was, like, cel-shaded and hand-drawn. You could, like, absolutely imagine this with that same kind of thing of they've redone the textures in 4K, where they've gone in, like, Ace Attorney and turned, like, kind of the sort of alias sprite work into actual lines and stuff. And it would probably look pretty good, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I think it would stand out quite a bit today because you don't really get that kind of retro. I can't really name too many games with the kind of retro futurism look that this one's rocking.
I'd love. If they made this now, they could lean more into that kind of mark making illustrative style, and I think that would just make it such a cool looking game.
No, and it's partially a thing of like, and again going like back to Carlos' artwork, but I always think of like 80s sci-fi between this and 40K.
Yeah.
It's all very like chunky and heavy looking.
Oh, yeah.
The way that this game does channel in quite a nice way. And if they were able to like kind of redo that in today's style and able to really lean on, because like when you're arresting the graffiti people, it made me think like all the graffiti people look like characters from Jet Set Radio.
Oh God, I was going to say the same thing.
So it's like,
yeah,
you got plugins of like, a lot of Mobius stuff, a lot of like Fifth Element. If you're able to like channel all of that into like a kind of a modern version of this, would look really great. But like even in this GameCube PS2 era version of this, still looks really strong, really solid, and like fits with the sort of height and tone that they're going for of like it's comic book grim of like, you laugh, but you also it also kind of makes you think in a fun way. Again, like this feels like a game that kind of like the Time Splitters team could have come up with as well. And I would probably say if the Time Splitters team came up with it, some of the levels would have been a little bit more interesting gameplay wise, because that was my
okay. Can I do a little critique as well, as if the Free Radical guys are on this, which is...
Please do.
My experience playing this was a bit buggy at the start, because I started out not knowing there was a PC version. There was a bit of ignorance there. So I downloaded, a GameCube copy for Dolphin, and I immediately ran into a few problems, which is the first game I've played on Dolphin that had massive lag spikes, and I couldn't get out of the tutorial.
Ooh.
Because there's combo inputs, because there weren't enough buttons on a GameCube controller, which it was quite unintuitive, because I don't even remember if there was like a button layout. But then, there's a PC version, grabbed it on GOG. Don't arrest me, Dredd. Don't put me in the cubes. I bought the game. And yeah, that was a much smoother ride, though. Matty, as you pointed out, most of the time the jump key would only work maybe 1 in 10 times.
Yeah, that's so random.
Which was probably an issue of frame rate, because the game was running at like 3,000 FPS. I didn't fix it because it was for one, there's no platforming challenges in the game like
and
there's
also
one.
Dredd's never jumped. He's not the kind of
yeah, that's a man
and
who's
it's very
never
funny.
jumped in his life.
Yeah. It's very funny to hit the jump key and him not jump, but just go. So I just had a grunt button, basically. I just had a dedicated grunt button, and that served me well enough.
And that feels canonical. Yeah. That feels like it should be in a Dredd game. I mean, there is literally a button just for shouting at people.
If I buy a Dredd doll that's got like a little ring at the back I can pull, he should just make grunting jump noises instead of any classic Dredd lines.
Just like Woody's Roundup, but it's like she just like it's like, has the battery died on this? But it's he just sounds like Quake guy.
Yeah, you just pull him and it's just the serious Sam.
God. I was going to say, even though we've talked about the first level a lot, I do want to quickly talk about the tutorial, because it does my favorite thing in FPS games, which is contextualizes the tutorial as a obstacle course.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's the simplest thing. If you're a developer listening to Bullet Time, which isn't a 0% chance, but if you want me to like your game, just contextualize your tutorial as an obstacle course. I will always love it.
Yeah.
I loved it when they did it in Modern Warfare 2. I loved it when they did it in Modern Warfare 1. And I especially liked it when they did it in Die Hard Vendetta, which, Snake, did you get any, like, especially in the prison level, did that remind you, like, a bunch of fucking Die Hard Vendetta?
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
Yeah, like, just the sort of narrowness of, like, corridors and, like, a lot of sort of windiness getting around reminded me a ton of
another British game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Bit Studio, another British. So again, it's all from the lineage of British games, and it was funny because I keep saying Time Splitters. I imagine probably their nearest, like, apart from Halo, but again, Halo's like nearest evolutionary ancestor as well. It all goes back to GoldenEye, where you keep moving between corridor, big open arena, corridor, big open outside area, corridor, like. They just constantly keep changing the shape of levels between that sort of stuff. But they're, rather than aiming for, say, like Call of Duty style, really nice level feel, it's more so they're going for, like, trying to realize places, which is cool in this, considering that, like, Mega City 1 obviously doesn't exist. So they're trying to do a lot of, like, well, how would this function in the real world? And like, especially in the mall when you're going through like the back rooms and sort of seeing behind the shops and stuff like that, it's all pretty interesting.
Yeah. Rare was also started by two brothers.
That's true. Chris and Tim Stamper.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier when you said about the Kingsley brothers, I was like, it doesn't happen often, but it happens often enough that it's quite weird that British game studios are formed by two brothers. Because
you know
there's
what the
also
funniest one is?
Oliver twins.
The Oliver twins who are literally identical twins.
Yes, yeah. And
me and Snake know a guy who worked for the Oliver twins for a long time, and the funniest thing was that I guess we're shouting him out because he's a good guy and he makes good videos. Mark Flynn on YouTube, he used to go by the name The Artist Mark Flynn.
Yes, I think I followed.
And partially why the Oliver twins hired him was because they were like, "Oh, so you're an artist then? Cool. Can you do like graphics and stuff for us?" Which he could, but it was just, but that was partially why they hired him, which I thought was so.
He's like, it's actually performance art. I just do interpretive dance.
Yeah, exactly. The dancer Mark Flynn. Do we want to, I guess, so we've kind of danced around the plot a little bit, but I guess just to sort of like sum it up, it's mostly an adaptation of the Judge, well, it's the storyline
It's a sequel.
It's a sequel
to it, isn't it?
Yeah, so I spent not as long as I would have liked, but I spent some time trying to figure out when this story is set in Judge Dredd canon, because it isn't adapting an existing comic as far as I can tell, because it starts off with the Dark Judges are in this sort of sci-fi containment unit, which is basically the thing from Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And then someone, like, they possess a scientist and he like pushes the button to let them all out. So it's a sequel to, I don't know, any number of times the Dark Judges have been caught and sealed away, but I don't remember them being put in these sort of containment things. So I've not read every comic, so it could well be there.
Of course.
Happy to be corrected. But yeah, it's not a direct adaptation of like Dredd versus Death, which is like the big trade paperback of the first Death story. So it just kind of happens at some undisclosed point in Mega City 1
Because
history.
I know that the original Judge Death comic ends with, because obviously from your video, Anderson, who's in the 2012 Dredd film, uses her psychic powers to basically contain death within her body.
Yes.
And then they essentially put her in cryogenic stasis. But then after that, the kind of the containment is broken and it's set free.
Mm-hmm.
Anderson's back in this, and the way, I guess, spoilers, the way that the game ends is that she uses her psychic powers again to pull death into her body. And I was like, oh, so they're kind of recreating the comic again. But then like 5 minutes later, she walks out of the Hall of Justice and it's just like, oh, did you miss me, Dredd?
Yeah.
No.
It's kind of like being vaccinated. You do it once and you're just kind of used to it.
Yeah,
So I
it's
think she
easy
just,
to do the next time.
Sucked him up and then pooped him out into the jar again, I guess, or something like that, you know?
Yeah, she vomited into the fridge and they closed the fridge and he's in the fridge forever now.
Yeah. One thing I wrote down, and this is just a bit, this is the first thing I noticed, and I just wrote this down in my notes, and I put, OMG, Judge Anderson's massive tits. What the fuck?
Oh God, the fucking the shot where she.
What is up with
the
that?
shot where she's knocked out and he's holding her in the Superman
model,
holding Lois Crisis on Infinite Worlds pose.
They decided to model
the camera just
massive
lingers
tits
on
her.
the world's largest fucking cleavage strip, and it's
she's
just
got
like,
the uniform unzipped all the way down to her navel, and I'm like, come on, they don't even do this in the comic. Like this, who's this for?
Her and Judge Hershey have the same thing, where it's just like
Rebellion did interfere in some way.
Yeah, that's the one thing. That's the one
Rebellion
editorial.
getting their rocks off in some way.
Because Hershey's in it, and Hershey's brilliant. Probably my favorite character in the whole
I
of the
scrolled
comic.
through. I don't know how it didn't register me when I was playing the game, but looking at the shot.
Yeah, and Hershey, she's got the big kind of like chest piece because she's the chief judge, so she's got that giant metal eagle, but she also has her uniform done up. And it's just such a weird thing. And I think actually, in my video that I spoke about this, I said actually one of the things they do with Judge Anderson, and this is something that the creators of the character did on purpose. John Wagner did this on purpose. They wanted her to be feminine. They wanted her to be vulnerable. They wanted her to be sensual. They wanted her to have feminine traits, but also be strong. And I think they achieved it very well in the comic. And in this, I'm like, they did just go with sassy, sexy girl. Who happens to be psychic.
It's very 2003 Maxim Knots magazine, like in regards to
that's perfect.
It's
That is
very,
perfect.
you know what? You know what it is? It's very Sin, which is a
Oh,
very
God, Sin.
different.
Good shout, yes.
God.
Yeah, it's very Sin in that kind of writing where it's very dumb and very teenager minded.
Yeah.
Actually, do you know what actually makes this ultimate Maxim core? And funnily enough, I do have a review from Maxim pasted in here as well, which we can have a look at the end.
Oh, wow.
But, not only is the world full of there's a fake pot noodle brand called Grot Noodle, and I was like, but that's the 80s sort of 2000 feet anachronism. But it is also full of Red Bull. Just the brand Red
I was
Bull.
waiting for someone to bring up fucking Dread Bull in this.
Yeah, I bet all of us have this written in the notes somewhere, just going, "What the fuck's up with the Red Bull product placement?"
Why is there so much Red Bull
One
over the
level. I remember it mostly in like the cult hideout, where it's like, is this cult sponsored by fucking Red Bull?
So
It's actually the Red Bull cult, yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote down. I think that when you get to this, like the third level, you get to the docks. And I was like, of course you've got docks, because the best thing about Mega City 1 is it's a bit like Gotham in Batman in that you can just have everything. It's got a docks, it's got an airport, it's got a mine, it's got a mountain. You know, what do you need? We can put it in there. Don't worry about it.
It's Mega City.
It's a mega city. It's the whole eastern seaboard, of course. So, of course, we've got a docks. And it's an illegal Red Bull smuggling operation. And you only get this by reading the loading screen. And it's a really funny idea. Like, because actually energy drinks probably would be a controlled substance in this world because everything's a fucking controlled substance.
I mean, I feel like in the world of Judge Dredd, like they don't have water anymore. They only can drink Red Bull. Like that is the only substance they get in that world.
If it was a few years later, it would have been Four Loco.
Yes.
Before that got boring.
Yeah.
But yeah, it reminded me because there is actually a strip fairly early on in 2008 AD where Dredd is infiltrating a ring of comic book smugglers of people who are smuggling and selling illegal contraband of 20th century comics. And they're actually selling 2 copies of 2000 AD. But the whole thing is basically comics and anything like satirical and funny are completely banned. All communication has to go through, Big Brother, has to go through the government, has to go through the establishment. So these things they fall outside the law. And it's just a silly, silly comic. But it's, again, there's something to it. There's a little something there that you can latch onto. And it reminded me of that. Like, it's like, here's Dredd breaking a ring of people selling energy drinks. And it's like...
Do you know what that...
But it's real.
It reminds me of Snake. You remember is it Time Splitters 2 or 3 where one of the arcade missions is... they've been making illegal copies of Time Splitters 2 on CDs.
That is one of the arcade missions. Is you crack down on software pirates and gun them down in an arcade mission. It's also that's also an objective in this 90s game where you play like a cab driver in like a futuristic sci-fi punk city and you have to gun people down. And one mission is go and kill some software pirates in the park with your murder taxi.
I've never heard of this game.
Quarantine, that's the name of the game.
Wow.
Is Quarantine... Could we do Quarantine on the pod, or is it not an FPS?
I don't know if you'd want to do it. It's very hard and it's a very tricksy game, but it's a curiosity. I'd like an excuse to play it, I guess.
Okay, we'll put Quarantine on the list then.
I guess, it is a first-person shooter. It just happens to take place in a hover taxi. So
interesting. A bit like Battle Tank, which... Funnily enough, Rebellion would when Atari went into administration, Rebellion they took the fastest Concorde to go over, and it was like, could we get the Battle Tank campaign? It's like, you don't want Driver, you don't want no, we want Battle Tank. Give us Battle Tank. Okay.
You know when Giant Bomb used to host I don't know if they still do it, but people could make custom lists of games which featured specific elements.
Oh, yeah.
If that feature still exists, I hope someone can go out there and please make a list of every game that has ever had a mission where you kill software pirates, which is clearly just the developers just taking it out on software pirates.
God. Well, I think it's also tongue-in-cheek because we fucking evoked his name earlier, Lars Ulrich, but just like that era of the 90s where people were like, you don't understand. If people download songs, like, that's the end of society.
Yeah.
That's the end of culture as we know it. It's like,
home taping was bad enough, but this is just too far.
oh, God,
Napster must be stopped.
We need to stop Napster as soon as possible.
Please don't stop Napster. I still have stocks in Napster. Don't ask, long story.
Oh yeah,
I've
true.
probably told it before on the pod.
I know we have talked about the Napster story on the. I think it was
Yeah.
even doing Time Splitters as well. Let's talk a little bit about the combat stuff, just because I mentioned that I really like the tutorial level in this. And Snake, you did mention the fact that the GameCube version is fucked because you only have like 5 buttons on that controller. The PC version's pretty skunky. PS2 was the way that I went for emulation, and I would say pretty spot on in that. So you go through, and it's just like, sorry, Dredd, but it's been a year. Everybody needs to do this, and so like you go through and you arrest people, and blah blah blah, and then you go down to the gun range. Guns in this feel okay. Is my review. Lawgiver is my favorite because it is like
By a long way.
I play a lot of FPS games where it's just the Doom thing of pistol, shotgun, SMG. I like it when I just get one gun and it's like the everything gun. It reminded me a bit of, funnily enough, Control, the Remedy game where you only have the receiver, but the receiver changes into different forms. Whereas,
Nice, yeah.
hey, the Lawgiver was literally invented to do that in the 1970s of, it's, it can do this, it can do this, it can do this, it's voice activated, so you say what you want it to do, and yeah, just what a great all-time weapon of just like how much stuff it can achieve, and it is like so tied into just Dredd's thing of, everything all kind of leads to the same thing of execution as much as possible, but just there's a lot of fun ways to do it.
Yeah.
It is pretty neat because, you got like armor piercing, ricochet, like incendiary, explosive, and the way it's balanced is neat, which is your magazine is kind of represented abstractly as just a bar, and different bullet types have different ammo costs. So you just go standard bullet, full auto, but get like the most bullets out, or go armor piercing, and which is just like bigger bullet. Or do you want some explosions? I never used ricochet, which I'm quite sad about, but I never found like a time.
I tried really hard.
I never found a time for ricochet.
Yeah, I tried really hard to find a practical use for those ricochet rounds, but it just didn't present itself.
It's just kind of tragic that you don't really get hostage situations in the game where it'd be like, I need to bend the bullet and hit this
I was
going to
say, if they had Nintendo brain, there would be like, oh, sorry, Dredd, there's a button that we need to press, but you'd have to shoot it in an angle. They would force you to use the rubber bullets that way.
Yeah. This isn't very much a puzzle game. There are
there's no puzzle at all in this game.
It's very brute force.
Yeah. Which I think
the only puzzle is how hard do I want to kill this guy, which is sometimes you don't, because you know what the most satisfying thing in this game is? Shooting the gun out of someone's hand and arresting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's got good ragdoll juice.
And that's once you get used to shooting the guns out of their hands and arresting them, you can end firefights really quickly, like way quicker than if you were trying to kill them. And then you're also racking up those mega good dread points.
The thing that I tried to get into the Rhythm Badoon was like, how much do I have to shoot this person to not kill them, but get it to the point that they will just surrender? Yeah, like I got very much into just doing the rest as much as possible, which again, like, you don't really see a lot of like the last police game that I can think of that tried to do like you have to follow police procedure is, funnily enough, Battlefield Hardline, which that's a fucking bullet time game. If like we'll have to do it at some point, but because other than that, it's mostly just like police aesthetics, like stuff like Ready or Not.
The only other one I can think of from this time is True Crime Streets of LA, which you literally cannot progress the story if you don't have enough good boy points.
Oh yeah, they force you to do like if you don't
they force you to do free roam grinding to like rack up enough good boy points to continue the story.
God, yeah. Versus when they got to Sleeping Dogs, they were just like, oh, don't fucking worry about it. Just do whatever you want.
When they got to Sleeping Dogs, they did the sick thing of you have 2 separate score trackers and you can beat both. Hey, how good a triad were you and how good a cop were you at the same time? Which is like, that is a good scoring system. You've got to grind that shit out like Tony Hawk and stay in the middle.
Yeah.
Dredd's scoring system is more abstract but also more streamlined, and it's really just, are you obeying the law? Which is actually the great thing about Dredd, is he's not a good person. He's not a morally upstanding person. He obeys the law. So whatever the law says, he will do it. If the law says for him to do something absolutely horrible, he will do it. And that's, again, part of the social commentary. So all the game actually is judging you on is, are you obeying the law? So there are no good boy points. There's only law points. And so basically it's like, if you're shooting people after they've surrendered, that's against the law. You know, and that's it.
In fact, for your score, it's better that you let them shoot you first so they get a life sentence guaranteed.
That's it. It's actually better. You goad them into it. Better to goad them into attacking you first, because that's not against the law, and then killing them or arresting them, which is just great. The only thing that does, I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you do actually go ham on civilians and start murdering people, eventually the super judges turn up to come and get you.
Yeah, you have a secondary health bar of sorts in this game, which is if you break your law meter too much, game over.
Yeah.
Because you can't really stop them once the super judges are coming, can't you?
Exactly that.
It's an interesting system in regards to just kind of like, because this is the sort of game that, what I said earlier, that it feels like a really kind of high quality Quake mod. You could imagine the Doom version of this, where it's just like you go through and all the demons have been like reskinned into punks or whatever. But this is the element on top of that, which is just like, well, we don't want you to just go around running and gunning. We want like a slight amount of brains to this, which, again, having played a lot of FPS games for bullet time, I appreciate those small bits of friction that they're adding for the lore and the kind of, you know, the kind of dynamics of the world of, hey, you're Judge Dredd. Can you try and at least role play like Judge Dredd as much as possible? You know?
And the SJS, who are those super judges, the Special Judiciary Service, I think they are, that's canon. Yeah. They're real. That's like the internal affairs of 2000 AD, of Mega City 1. So it's a nice little...
Dredd has been offered a position with them but turned it down because he hates paperwork.
Yeah.
He just wants to
because he just wants to be a street judge. He was offered to be chief judge as well, and he turned it down because he just likes...
That was what happened at the end of the fucking Stallone one, wasn't it? We was like, oh, all the chief judges are dead. Do you want to be one? And he's just like, no, I'm a street judge.
Yeah.
Do you know what's funny? I made a note about this, and we haven't quite gone through the levels yet, but we can hit them as quickly as possible because there's not like a ton to say. But when you go into the well, no, it's not the Undercity. It's
I think it is. I think it's literally called the Undercity.
Yeah.
So there's a level called New York.
Yeah, it's the old New York level, but I'm pretty sure there's a level that you go into, and it's kind of like it's full of a lot of generators and pipes and stuff, and basically you have to protect like a bunch of workmen who are down there. One of them sounds exactly like Stallone does, and like somebody doing a shit Stallone impression.
Oh, I think I did hear that as well, actually. Yeah.
Oh, that's in sorry. So that's in Resyk, the level that you go to where they're turning people into Soylent Green, essentially. Yeah, there's a guy.
That was one of the questions I had to ask from watching two things. Like, what is Resyk? And getting the answer, it's Soylent Green. I don't know if I was like, I don't know how I feel about that answer, because maybe somehow I felt I was expecting something more sinister, even though Soylent Green is a perfect
answer. It's pretty sinister, yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yeah, it's never, again, it's one of these things, it's never explained. It's never fully explained what Resyk is. It is all the dead people are taken to Resyk, and they're broken down into constituent parts and used for things. So, like, basically it's allowing you to imagine what a city or a society like Mega City 1 would do with the, tens of thousands of dead bodies that it processes every day. But, like, I don't know, glue, fertilizer, gelatin, ropes, all the sick, disgusting stuff you've ever heard of happening in real life, and then maybe some more that your imagination can come up with, like Soylent Green. Basically, I don't think... By never really being clear, it means you're coming up with the
honestly,
version.
It's better than an answer, honestly.
Yeah.
It's better than an answer to just let you wonder what the fuck are you doing with all the dead bodies.
But that's
it. When you're walking around, tongue-in-cheek,
when you're walking around Resyk...
It's 80s, like... Yeah.
Go, James, go.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say it's like classic British, like, kind of, 80s bureaucracy stuff of just like, what does this department do? Oh, we don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there are bits in the levels... When you're walking around, there's just these huge vats of just bubbling stuff, and it's like really fucking creepy. It's really, you're like, that's people. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say it, but like, you're like, what the hell else is in all these vats? And there's like steam coming off of it, and I'm like, this is fucking gross, man.
Being incredibly optimistic, maybe it's algae, because that's apparently an initiative of people. It's not algae. It's definitely not its bodies.
But it moves past it so quickly, that it doesn't dwell on it, and it just leaves it up to you. So it stays with you if you're one of those people. If you can just get over it and move on with your life. But if you're like me, you're like lying there at night going, what the fuck was in those vats?
So it's kind of so the plot very basically is just, so it's day in the life of Dredd, but then again, it's interrupted by vampires, and it turns out it's all being constructed by so what are they called? The death judges?
The dark judges.
The dark judges.
The dark judges, yeah.
Who are being held at Nixon Penitentiary.
Bit on the nose.
Which is what I said, kind of reminded me a lot of when we did Die Hard Vendetta on the podcast. Like, that had a prison level in it as well. And I guess just maybe there's not really a lot that you can do with prison levels, because they all kind of feel this feels the same as that one did. And I feel like I've played a lot of prison games where they have that sort of thing of a lot of like kind of narrow corridors and a lot of kind of like windy sort of directions and stuff like that, which is fine.
You know what? I'll give it to Vendetta. Vendetta had a cool conceit with, you are in jail, you have been arrested. So
that is true,
start
yeah.
with zero gear and work your way out. But it was the most Die Hard level in the Die Hard game.
Funnily enough, yeah. Like, it's the sort of thing that you would imagine they would do a film about, is John McClane trying to escape from prison. Yeah. But, one of the judges gets tricks into releasing the judges, and then they are spooky ghosts that fly around and
with like
have
little
to go and grab
cute mermaid tails.
Yeah, they do. They have little. They're the ghosts from Pac-Man.
Yeah. They have mermaid tails and really bad boss fights.
Oh god, everyone is bad. Everyone is bad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even the final one.
Good
It's
boss
the
fight
worst.
amongst them.
Yeah. Which basically then sets Dredd off on an adventure to go and round them all up using the fucking the backpack
From Ghostbusters.
fucking Ghostbusters to suck them up.
I wrote in
one
my
thing that
notes, I
got
just
me
put,
about it was
busting
like-
makes me feel good.
They've all taken over bodies, and for the first couple, it's like, Dredd, don't destroy the body. We need to arrest them. But then on the last two, it's just like, yeah, fuck it, kill them, get rid of them.
So the final one was funny because something happens early on in the game, which I was like, oh, there was no payoff to that, but that's kind of funny. But then eventually there was payoff to it, but I guess we'll get to it. But so let's. I'm gonna do, well, funnily enough, because I kept mentioning time splitters. I guess we'll simplify this by saying Matty and Snake, and I guess Matt, you can go first. Out of the levels that you did, which was your favorite one? Because I definitely have one, and I feel like we're probably all gonna have the same one. But I'll let you
The Smokatorium
Interesting.
was my favorite level.
Smokatorium's nice and short.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the quickest level for sure.
I can kind of tell you why if you like, or would you want Snake to go first? And...
Yeah, no, please do. Please walk me through what you liked about
it. Wasn't my favorite. But...
So, and also tell us a bit. So, is this like a concept that's in the comics where it's like you can only smoke in certain places?
Yes,
right?
exactly. So,
very 2005, smoking was banned in pubs.
Yeah, well, that's it. The smoky
like
ban was around. I think the Smokatorium predates it. I think the Smokatorium is probably like 80s or, probably feels like an 80s idea. Because that was at the time when smoking was considered, basically like a civil liberty. It's like a fucking right. Everyone's like, you can't take my fags away. So they were like, in the future, the bloody liberal government is going to, they're going to come down on us so hard, we're going to have to smoke in a big glass dome. And that's what it is. It's just that you go to this place to smoke in a big glass dome. So it is real. It's from the law. And what I like about it is firstly, that's very funny. I think it's very funny that there is a whole building in a city dedicated to just smoking cigarettes. That's all it's for. And I think that's really funny. And then it's Judge Fire.
That's a funny idea.
Judge Fire turns up there. And again, it's like quite funny because he's fire. And so like, oh yeah, cool. That it's already full of smoke. And I quite like the idea that it's, as a boss fight, to me, I think it was the most interesting because he's kind of like a stalker enemy. You can't kill him.
Yes.
You can't shoot him. You've got to lead him around and you've got to trigger these sprinklers so that he gets wet and he runs away. And it's that kind of stupid, like inconsistent tone that I think is great. Because like you said, the first one, you're like, you can't destroy the body. We've got to go through these quite convoluted hoops to trap the spirit. But also, like, we're acknowledging that these are like immortal, almost godlike beings from a parallel dimension, but also sprinklers really work on him. Like, he really doesn't like some water. It's not a lot. It's just a gentle sprinkling is enough that you can back him into a corner and then you can kind of make your play. So I just think as a puzzle, if you want to call it that, it was pretty simple. But also the ending is you suck him through a ventilation shaft and then you trap his spirit in a Ghostbusters machine. So like, it's just, I don't know, like it has this really great, tonally inconsistent, silly stupidity to it, which I thought was great. It could have been realised a bit deeper because like Snake said, that whole level probably lasts 5 minutes. But it was a really fun little, I can figure this out in 30 seconds and I can actually achieve it in 3 minutes. Like a nice little burst.
It's also, it's one of those things as well, is that like if the idea was good for 5 minutes, then it's great it's 5 minutes, rather than them trying to stretch it out to like maybe 20 or 30 or something.
Yeah, no, that would have lost all of its luster if you had to keep dragging him to rooms for like even twice as long. It would have been like, oh, come on.
It reminded me a bit of, Matty, did you ever play MGS5?
Oh, no. Didn't.
Okay, Snake, you know what I'm talking about, though. When
I know, you're talking about the man on fire.
Yeah, when you fight Volgan for the first time, and because it's a Kojima game, and this was when he was really feeling himself on ImSim stuff, there's like multiple ways that you can douse him, but my favorite one is that after that level, one of the weapons you can unlock is literally a water gun that has zero like offensive value to it, but you can use it to like hold up enemies, you can use it to like wake them up and stuff, but you can use it on the man on fire. And if you squirt him enough, you do eventually douse him out, but it takes a lot of shots to do so.
Because it is like a dinky, like you could buy this from a corner store water gun.
Yeah.
Effective range of 5 feet.
Yeah.
No, not even 5 feet. What am I talking about?
Like an arm's length is about as much as
Love that.
If you were particularly motivated, you could wee further than this water gun.
Yeah. Snake, what about you? What was your favourite level?
The mall for me.
Exactly the same for me.
I like malls, and as my favorite side objective, which is like there's a zombie apocalypse on, but also some people are looting, which is that just felt quintessentially stupid. And
that's Dredd.
Yeah, that's Dredd.
No, it's funny because it did introduce a mechanic in that level, and I'm sure it must have been in previous ones, but this was the one I was thinking of, that I didn't massively love, which was saving hostages, because the AI is so... But I mean, it's a game.
The AI is terrible. I was having Dead Rising flashbacks saving these fuckers.
As well, especially in a mall.
That was exactly what it reminded me of. Is zombies in a mall and you're saving people. It's like Dead Rising, like 2 years before that came out. But
the only time I felt like, because this game's like 3 hours long, it is a tight package, but
it's a short game. Yep.
Yeah, in the hospital, I was thinking, oh, fuck off. Which, it wasn't actually that bad when he's like, hey, track down all these hostages and save them. I was like, do I have to?
I don't think you do. I think it's a secondary... I think
it is pretty much secondary. You can let them all die, but I needed to do it.
You want to get that Judge Dredd rating?
Yeah, because I needed to do it because I had to. That's my only logic.
I
can't say no.
The mall was quite good in that there's quite a lot of like very tight corridors with like flickering neon lights, and you're walking down with a shotgun blasting zombies. And I was like, this is before Doom 3 or Fear.
I wrote Doom 3 on my on the fucking document where it's like, especially with the vampire guys who kind of like quick attack you. Yeah. They're very like the imps in Doom 3. And I was like, you're trying to like pull Doom 3 off on a GameCube budget. There was also a lot of Halo
Doom
in this.
3 though, right?
Yeah, no. So this came out 2003 and Doom 3 is the next year.
So
I mean, they kind
Doom
of knew
3 was trying to do Judge Dredd.
I honestly think they're just trying to do classic zombie shtick, because this is like one of the only levels to start you with a shotgun. Like they knew, they were like, hey, this is a zombie level. We're just going to start you with a shotgun and let you go ham. This is an unwind and just blast some guys level.
Yeah, and that's it. That's it,
it's
right?
After the docks, which is like a very long kind of human enemy level, which is very long range. So then, like, give you a shotgun to let you blow off some steam at the mall.
Very much after the docks, it very much just stops being the interesting stuff I was saying about arresting and shooting the guns, and it very much is a monster shooter from that point on.
Yeah.
So it kind of drops what I thought was the most interesting part of being that it's a morally ambiguous,
they never really recover that
dystopian story. And it's just a man running down corridors shooting zombies. It's a sci-fi shooter, which is still good because again the setting supports it, but it almost didn't need to be a Dredd game if you're going to be running down corridors blasting zombies with a shotgun.
Like, that's the stuff
Yeah.
where it feels like if somebody else had made a Judge Dredd game where it was literally they would just staple in a Judge Dredd skin to something else.
Yeah, like your
you
Doom
have the
mod
lawgiver
analogy.
and stuff. Yeah, you did it as a Doom mod. Whereas, yeah, as he said, it's all the stuff in the beginning which really sets up the world. And it is a shame they don't quite manage to bring that back. Although you do have those small elements like the mall where you'll just run in and, oh, hey, criminal activity's happening. What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
But
Did anyone else here feel like I mentioned this in Punisher as well, but did you feel like this game was going to be a bit simmy, being the kind of time it came out and the dystopian cyberpunk setting?
I had no prior expectations on this
Right.
one, actually. I think I kind of got what I expected, which was linear shooter with a few unique mechanics.
Because I kept falling for that.
Yeah, I never kind of got to the point of trying to move boxes. I don't even think there was any scenario where I was trying to solve anything in a particularly clever way.
Yeah.
I think the cleverest I got was during the recycle level where I was like using verticality a little bit and kind of jumping around zombies on tight ledges.
Yeah.
I think that's as close as I got to kind of freedom of expression.
I kept falling for the trick. I think it was giving me real Deus Exy vibes. And I think that's it. Like it's maybe
I think
like
it's just the setting
the setting, the music, like the rain, the city, like it had that vibe, and because it's like a early 2000s game, it reminded me of that period of my life when I was playing a lot of like Thief and Deus Ex. So like I think I was kind of like sat in that moment, and because the levels are actually quite big, I found myself like poking around in every corner, trying to see if there was another route, trying to see if there was something to explore here. And I kept falling for this trick that it was going to be this deeper game than it really was. And actually really what it was is I was just spending a lot of time not doing what I'm supposed to, which is just shoot the lads.
Yeah.
Most you'll get if you go out of your way in this is you'll get med packs and extra ammo.
Yeah.
And speaking of, the med pack system in this game is... Okay, it's not really out there, but I do find it interesting that instead of med packs just refilling your health, which you do is you can get free in reserve, which is just functionally you have free health bars.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is handy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And much like a Riot Response, you get them from a guy.
Oh yeah, some levels do have healer judges, which are very rare in my experience. Like I can't remember too many of them throughout the game.
I remember them a lot in in Nixon
find
Prison.
dead
There's a
ones.
few. But yeah, it's funny that you were saying about because it wasn't Semi vibes, but like it's funny like thinking back on it and like when I played it, and the fact that I said it felt like a kind of a Quake thing. It gave me way more like Jedi Outcast vibes, where a lot of the time it felt like to progress forward, you were doing a lot of cheesing. Where like listening back to those episodes of Bullet Time, that was my big issue with those games, was that it felt like, oh, clipping on the geometry was actually the way forward. That's really stupid games. Why the fuck would you do that? And in fairness, this never gets as bad as that, because this is still in the GoldenEye mode of they don't really expect you to jump around or anything like that. But they do also build in a lot of GoldenEye stuff of, oh yeah, no, like there's just toilets you can go into. There's just spaces that exist to make this feel more like a real world, but don't really have like much of a point. Like all the different locker rooms and stuff within the prison like is very much that.
I kept trying to open things thinking I'd get a little treat. So I guess I did
That's what
fall
I'm
for it
saying.
in a way
That's
with
what I'm saying.
every...
It kept tricking me.
I guess I did fall for it.
And there are maybe 2 instances in the entire game where one of them's on the docks where there's like a non-lethal approach. So it'll come over the comm and it'll be like, oh, Dredd, in the next room or in the next warehouse, it's full of bad guys. So you can either just go in the door and just start guns blazing, or like round the back there's like a gas pipe and you can turn a handle and you can flood it with gas. And then and then they all drop their guns and they start coughing, and then you can turn the gas off, run in, and you can arrest them all. So like there's like a branching choice there. It's not particularly deep, but like there's 2 approaches to this one situation. And so there's like it kind of was going there. Like it's just tiny little bits that tricked me into thinking it was going to be a little more simmy than it really was. Did you not get that? Did you not see that bit?
No, I didn't. I think I just went in guns blazing.
Just blasting the lads.
Yeah, I think I did as well. Because I'm just now thinking about there's one moment in the one time in the game I got really lost was when I had to blow up a wall, which was never before or after a
Oh,
mechanic,
yeah.
and maybe I just didn't hear a bit of dialogue. But I went around those streets raging, because it's one of the few areas where there's like, it's kind of arena-y instead of
Yeah.
linear, where I can climb up and down all these buildings, and there's different rooms, and it's one of the more unique gunfights in the game as well, because there are so many angles to play. But then once I finished it, I was like, how do I progress? And then I just kind of got lucky to, thankfully, old game lighting and old game LOD to kind of realize, oh, that looks a bit wrong.
Yeah, it's a bit like
Boom. That took me 20 minutes.
the one thing in the cartoon that you can tell is going to move because it's not matte painted like the background. It was that.
Hey, that's on a cell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hold on. God. It was funny because, Mean Streets was, because that's the level after so you do the mall and then you do the labs, which I was going to mention quickly, but then you do the Mean Streets level, and I kind of nearly gave up at that point.
Yeah, that's a slog.
Yeah, it is a slog of a level, and it is like classic early 2000s. We haven't quite figured out the formula for FPS games yet, so there are just going to be a lot of like dead ends and rooms that don't really lead anywhere.
And you're constantly having all of your health and ammo just whittled down, and there's like not enough of anything. So like I save scummed all the way through that bit.
Yeah,
and also you've got an optional escort.
Whose
pathfinding is not up to the task of the suddenly much more complex geometry.
Right, I mean, any time I needed to get anybody to follow me, so like you mentioned earlier, Snake, about getting the civilians in the mall, you have to get them to the plane.
I just told them to wait until the path.
And then there's like a bit in the hospital as well. Every single time I had to escort anybody, they just automatically walked into a fire. It's like they're attracted to it. They just walked into a fire, set themselves on fire, then set me on fire in a panic. And I was like, this is very funny. But I was like, these people are stupid, man.
They're heat seeking.
I had a bit more luck with them, but they are not fun to deal with.
God.
They are very classic dumb escort NPC.
No, it did remind me a lot of when we played Riot Response, which funnily enough, the Smokatorium level also reminded me a bit of that, of just you were somewhere with fire and you had to like turn on the sprinklers and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic bullet time game in regards to like they wanted to do a bunch of ambitious ideas, but we only have a 10 meg of RAM.
Yeah,
that's fine. We can make it work. We can make this work on the GameCube with its half-sized discs. That's not an issue at all. Don't worry about it. And
so
like
5 megabytes of RAM is just going to the lawgiver function.
Yeah,
yeah. It's going to the skyboxes, which are 128 by 128 JPEGs stretched all the way out. God. I mean, plot-wise, it's not like a ton to get into, apart from a detail that I liked was when you go to the Icarus Labs, there's like a proper old-fashioned 40k style mad scientist in there who wants to figure out a way to gain immortality.
Yeah.
He injects himself right at the end of the level and says, "There's nothing you can do to stop me, Dredd." And Dredd just fucking shoots him. That's it. Like, he's like, did that do anything? Oh, I guess I got a results screen, so that might have done something. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
And then he reappears right at the end of the game where Judge Dredd is like, finally, I got a body that will... It can't be killed, so I'm fine. Nothing for me to worry about.
Yeah.
But the final boss is just you go around turning off generators.
Yeah.
And by generators, I mean psychic judges that they have in the HR Giga chair.
I had such a kind of reaction to that final boss of, that was it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's every boss.
It was so
every boss
easy.
Is like that.
It was so nothing. I know it was probably for the best, but part of me expected, this is a budget-ish game from 2003. This final boss is probably going to be awfully designed in a way that makes him really hard.
Yeah.
It was the opposite. It was awfully designed in a way that made it trivial to the point that I was just thought something had gone wrong.
Yeah. First time I played it, it comes up and it's like, we've got the immortal body. Judge Death has now got the immortal body. He's a big raging time splitters looking dude. And he's running about, and it's like immediately obvious. You've got the 3 lasers like firing up in the sky. So you go, cool, I got to figure out these 3 side judges. And I was like, I went into like RPing Judge Dredd mode, and I was like, well, I guess I got to kill him. I was like, that's the answer. So I just ran up to the first one, just blasted him in the head, and it went,
oh no,
level failed. And I'm like, what do you mean level failed? I've stopped the psychic. I could do the other two as well. I'm like, I'm taking the Warhammer 40k approach. Like,
that is a way of
Judge
stopping
Dredd is
the
a very
psychics.
literal guy.
Yeah.
And it turns out you didn't have to do that. So I failed it the first time because I took it a bit too literally. But yeah, then other than that, you just hold E and then it's solved.
Done.
The level that you go to as well, because like basically throughout the entire game, it is all set within Mega City 1. And it's the thing that you said where it's like, because it's the biggest city on Earth and it's like based on New York, you can basically go wherever you want. And for the most part, the game does kind of like kind of use all the opportunities of a world that big. Like you go to a mall, which is like the mall of the future, and you go to like a factory, and you even have a sewer level because, of course, every fucking game of this era had to have a sewer level. But this one's full of green goop, which is cool.
Yeah.
But right at the end, you go through old New York and make your way all the way to the Metropolitan Museum where it's full of cultists. But the last thing you do is you jump through a portal and end up in the Dead World, essentially, where the Dark Judges. So is that a thing in the comics?
Oh yeah, that's where the Dark Judges come from. So that's
okay. And is that also full of Ray Harryhausen skeletons?
No, not really. So in the comics, the Dark Judges are from their backstory is very similar to Dredd. They were judges. Right. I don't know what the full backstory is. It's actually recently, the comic is actually currently being written. The backstory of Dead World. But basically, like the top level of it is they recognize that all crimes are committed by living people, so therefore life must be the worst crime of all. So the simple solution is just genocide everybody, and then you won't have any crimes.
Yeah.
So once they've done that, they've...
I can see the logic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it makes sense.
As I said in the video I made, I was like, it's basically just taking Judge Dredd's logic and just kind of running with it to like the most ludicrous possible...
Logical
kind of
extreme.
So anyway, once they've done that, they've killed everybody, they then realise that there's a multiverse out there. And they're like, well, then we can't stop. The mission has to continue. We have to go into alternate realities and alternate timelines. We have to kill everyone there as well. So anyway, at the end of that comic, Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson go back to Dead World in order to fight the Dark Judges on their own home turf. And it's just bones. Right. Like the whole planet's just a planet of bones. It's just everything is dead. There's not a bit where skeletons get up and start fighting them. Although, when they added this into the game, I was like, I don't know, that's pretty cool. I do like skeletons.
No, I was going to say, I always like seeing...
You know what? Skeletons can't commit crime.
Well,
that's true, because they can't hide any guns anywhere. It always reminds me of in Arkham Asylum, where they built the X-ray vision where you could see the character skeletons inside them. It's like, that seems like a lot of effort for that. But then when the Scarecrow sections... You just fight Ray Harryhausen skeletons. It's like, that is a good model reuse.
Yeah.
You did a good job there, Rocksteady. But yeah, and this is just like, it's full of skeletons. And again, there's also like gigantic skeletons across the fucking like there's giant rib cages and shit.
Stuff,
you fight the final boss inside a giant rib cage, and it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, because they also
that must have been the fatties of that universe.
The
fatties.
It's the fatties, and they recognise the worst criminals of all of those fucking blue whales.
Yeah, they were living life to the fullest because they were living
up
for
here out of the sea. We can't
decades.
have them. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say it was on Dead World that I made my only notes about the music where I said it sounded like knockoff Chemical Brothers.
Oh, yeah. Knockoff Prodigy, knockoff Chemical Brothers. And I mean this in only the best way. That I think the music for this game is brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
It's a perfect fit.
Yeah. I've used it in a couple of my videos like in the past because it's just got a really great early 2000s vibe that I don't want to pay to license DJ Crush's music, so I can use this instead. But I'd say that the level before that, the Undercity, is maybe my second favorite level. Because I think Snake, you mentioned, it's kind of got that Demolition Man vibe where you're going into the previous iteration of civilization.
Oh no, I didn't say Demolition Man. James said that. I had the far stupider observation of kind of makes me think of Futurama.
Yes, no, it's good. Who did it first? Like I'm not even sure. But I like the idea that there's this previous version of society that's basically so fucked up. Like, we're not going to try and repair it. We're just going to concrete over it, and we're just going to build a new society on top of it. And so that it means that it's still there. And then what you get is all these dregs end up living there. All the kind of freaks and the rejects end up living in the Undercity. And you've mentioned, James, a couple of times about Warhammer 40,000. So I don't know if you've ever played the tabletop miniatures game Necromunda, but it has a very similar vibe. Necromunda is in the 40k universe, but it's set on giant cities that are vertical. They've got, thousands of levels.
That's the Hive Worlds.
The Hive Worlds. They go thousands of levels up and they go thousands of levels down. And what that means is you as a kind of GM or as a party, you can create any reality you like. If you want giant mutated rats, you can have it. If you want to have nuclear rivers of radioactive waste, you can have it. Anything you can think of, fantasy or science fiction, it all works because you've got a big enough environment. And I think that's what the Undercity does here. Like, Megacity 1 means we can have docks and airports and things like that. And the Undercity means you can just have whatever the fuck you want. In the comic, they have werewolves down in the Undercity. That's canon.
Huh.
Werewolves exist in 2000 AD. They live in the Undercity. Also, they did an Aliens versus Judge Dredd crossover comic. Xenomorphs live in the Undercity. Now, that's not considered canon to anybody except 2000 AD, because everything that happens in 2000 AD is canon. They've never had any canon reset. So Xenomorphs exist in the 2000 AD universe. They live in the Undercity because we can do whatever we want. If you go down far enough, sure, there's a big fucking HR Giga organic, alien hive down there with an alien queen laying eggs. Sure, why not? We can do that. And God. I think there's just, that again, there's probably me projecting onto it because that level doesn't really evoke that. But I think it almost feels like around the next corner, it could be there. Like just one level down, it could be there.
Especially considering Rebellion made the Alien vs Predator games. Could have just stuck a couple.
They could have just stuck a little xenomorph in there. Wouldn't it hurt?
Just recolored them so nobody would have known.
Yeah. And I mean, they definitely could have done mutants. That would have been kind of cool to have some kind of mutants down there.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that would have fit in the canon. It would have been much more fitting for the setting. Because also there's that really lurid green lighting. It's like it really makes you feel like the river's like radioactive waste or something. So I really like that. I mean, I love coloured lighting. It's something that feels very of its time. You don't see a lot of games now using very, very lurid coloured lighting, whereas the 2000s, when they'd basically just invented it, they were going ham on it. And this has got purple lights, green lights, red lights, like everything's coloured lighting. And
this game is a bit of a neon dream. You got a lot of purple in the mall as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's just a big colour spectrum.
And again, as you say, it is very kind of evocative of that era. Because again, the UI and the two weapon limit especially reminded me a lot of Halo Combat.
Very much, yeah.
And the mall especially feels like when you're on the Covenant ships, because all those back rooms are like lit in blue and purple and like a lot of, because what is it? It's like so primary colors are kind of considered more human, whereas the secondary colors you usually use them for aliens, which is why a lot of purple and greens are used in stuff like
for
the
Space Covenant.
Pirates and yeah. Because they're just colors that apart from green, which is like the most natural color you can get, but stuff like purples and blues very rarely occur in nature. So there's kind of a supernatural feeling to them, which, this game does use like pretty well for the most part.
Yeah.
But,
that's
cool. That's kind of my main thing with this game is that like, this game is good. Like I can tell, like it is a 7 out of 10 game in regards to it's rough around the edges. The level, like it has the issue that most of the stuff that I play on Bullet Time has, which either levels go on too long or that's just very boring in regards to the stuff that you do in them. But like, this game is incredibly, like, it's still very charming. And like, especially of its time, it's like, it is a solid little FPS game. So.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would say this is the best game I've ever played. But,
oh gosh, no.
But I think anybody who played it would go, yeah, this is good fun. They nailed that aesthetic. They definitely achieved what they were reaching for. It's tidy, it's tight, it does everything it wanted to do.
It's got enough unique elements as well, even though they do kind of taper off towards the back half, because you can still arrest cultists, but once it gets into the swing of this is a monster mash, then it kind of becomes a bit more standard shooter. You lose the arresting element, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
No, And it doesn't have the thing that Time Splitters has, where at least those levels are really short and arcadey feeling. So it's like the sort of generico shooting in that is made up by the fact. Well, but even then with Time Splitters, there was a lot of imagination in like, okay, here's the cowboy level where people are popping out of like windows, like point blank. Whereas here's the timed mission where you have to turn off all the bombs. Like there isn't really anything like that in Dredd. Like, this is very much more kind of grounded day-in-the-life police stuff, which, again, as we said, towards the latter half, that police stuff really does start to disappear, which, yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's not the worst thing in the world, but then nothing really replaces it, which is the main issue.
You do still get pockets of it, like when you're in the Undercity, you still have a few, like, gangster fights. They try and... It's funny where... They've got these two modes of gameplay, which is one where you are outright killing, another where, I can go for hand shots and I can play this fight a bit more tactically, but because you're going to be running low on health and maybe ammo, you've got to weigh up. Do I want to indulge in the game's unique USP and take this a bit more seriously?
Yeah, I managed to achieve a couple of rests in the Undercity, and I was quite proud of myself. I was like, in a tense firefight, I'm under fire from like 3 different directions. So I managed to nail a few arrests. And it did make me laugh a little bit because I was like, am I going to have to take him back up the top now to the meat wagon? Like, who's picking him up?
Sending someone else down here?
But yeah, but you're right. Like, that's the minority at this point because we're now well into just blasting monster hours here. We've got a ray gun, you've got a laser gun, and you're just shooting skeletons and vampires. And so the arrests absolutely take a back seat for the last third of the game.
I do have a dumb I do have a dumb gun note, which is it's funny that in this game, which all the guns are pretty unrecognizably sci-fi, they're not really based on any real world gun, at least not easily discernible. But then the machine gun is clearly a G36E, which is funny, but that is just a futuristic looking gun, so sod it. Yeah. You can whack a drum mag in it, it's basically an LMG. Sure, why not?
Yeah, and it's got like a big double drum, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can just... That gun, it's funny, especially on the docks level, where I wound up having like 50 spare mags for it, because...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because there's those so cultists who have that. Yeah.
This game, on another odd note, I guess, about the arresting system, which is maybe a very grim note, but wow, this game gets you profiling people, because I had to start learning, okay, which models will actually surrender versus which ones am I just going to have to put down because they're not stopping.
Yeah, because
I definitely had that with the cultists, where it was the red coats are the ones that are more likely to do it versus the white coat guys who did have the big machine guns.
Yeah, the big dudes who look like they're in the bondage gear, if you shoot their primary, they'll pull out a pistol. And if you shoot their pistol, they'll just pull another pistol, and they have an infinite supply of pistols. So you have to kill them, and that's a really good point, Snake. Like, you're now profiling people. Like, nope, that one has to die. There's no hope for that person.
They have to go. He has infinite pistols.
He has infinite pistols. You know what these people are like.
It's partially a thing as well, is that like I think of, because like the thing that I think with a lot of bullet time stuff is like, oh, could you kind of remake this stay and whatever. In this climate, I don't know how well a Judge Dredd game would go.
I mean, it's funny because all the stuff that's in this game feels more prescient about arresting protesters.
1,000%.
So relevant.
The fucking the Red Bull smuggling ring, which, I mean, nowadays you have to be 16 and over and will get thing to buy an energy drink.
That is true. Yeah.
Odd.
This
was like ahead of its time in the grimmest ways.
Yeah, definitely. There is a book by Michael Mulcher, who is the brand manager at Rebellion. It's called I Am the Law, How Judge Dredd Predicted Our Future. And I recommend this book to so many people. I recommend it in my video, but I also recommend it just to people in general. It's fantastic. For a comic book which was written, coming up 50 years ago, some of the things they wrote about then have come true in the years since, and some of it has been a long burn and hasn't come true until now. But it's this idea of coming up with the most crazy, ridiculous ideas for a right-leaning conservative government. Like, what would be the craziest idea? Oh, banning energy drinks. And then actually you just wait long enough and it happens. So it's so much of this, even though it was written 20, 30, 40 years ago, it still feels relevant. It still feels prescient. And I absolutely think a Judge Dredd game would fly now. It would fly.
Oh my god! As well as like the smokatorium level. Oh, you can only smoke in these things, and the the 2005 smoking ban. They are trying now to like do the smoke-free generation by after a certain point you just can't buy cigarettes.
Yeah, after a certain birthday,
I'm honestly not fully against, but it kind of stands to the very weird point that this game is. This Judge Dredd in general is oddly prescient.
There's something I could talk about on the pod, but I can't say too much because I do instructional design for a living. But one of our clients is fucking Philip Morris International. And basically, one of the things with that is that like they cannot sell to new smokers. Like what they call it is legacy users because. If I've never smoked in my life, so if I just walked into a tobacconist tomorrow or like a vape shop and I said, hey, I want to get into this, they would have to turn me away. They'd say, we cannot sell to you. So these products consumable products like that can only be sold to legacy users. So yeah, at that point, like, what is the kind of the Judge Dredd version of that? It's just like, you have like, they're just writing out like kind of the last few people who were growing tobacco, like sort of how like, because I live in Swansea and it's like one of the fucking cannabis capitals of the UK, and you always hear whirlybirds going by above you, and it's because they have the infrared cameras looking for people with hydroponic plants.
In the loft,
ceilings growing weeds. Would the Judge Dredd version of that be growing tobacco plants, just like regular fucking stuff like. I mean, you're both absolutely right in that this is the perfect time that they would make a Judge Dredd game, but it is also the thing of...
It's a question of applicability versus taste, which I think it's more applicable now than ever, but feels more near the knuckle, which I frankly don't think should be a problem, but I can kind of see why it might give someone pause.
I think very much all three of us are kind of on the agreement of, like, you should be able to kind of push the boundaries a little bit more, especially in games in regards to like the topics that, like, We Are the Police, I think is a really good example of that in regards to a game that doesn't pull its punches in regards to police brutality. I was thinking more just in regards to the fact of like how people are really quick to try and you could not politicize Judge Dredd. It is fucking built into
You're talking about the application of law and it going overstep and literal judge, jury, and executioner.
I just mean more people just seeing, like, they wouldn't see the kind of the parody elements of it. They would think that if you made a Judge Dredd game in 2024, you think Judge Dredd is based.
Yeah, they would say they made Judge Dredd
Judge
woke.
Dredd never got. Yeah. Judge Dredd never got picked up by bobbies the same way the Punisher did by US law enforcement, which begs the question of which was the better satire.
Exactly.
A little bit though, like not quite as much, but a little bit here. Like in the UK, newspapers, politicians, they know the name and they know the terminology. They have used the term Judge Dredd to describe policing in an aspirational way.
Didn't John Major say like "I am the law" or something like
not
that?
As often, but actually it's often used as a shorthand for a policeman who's like heavy-handed or a policeman who oversteps the boundaries. It's certainly within our vocabulary, but there are some occasions where a right-wing policeman has basically like mentioned that Judge Dredd is an aspirational figure. And so, like,
never mind me then.
Well, no, but you're right, Snake. It's not as common. It is much rarer, and again, that comes down to just the cultural kind of absorption of it. We all know. No,
we never had the thing where like Chris Kyle had the fucking Punisher symbol as his. Like he took on that iconography himself. Which
you need a really big chinned officer, and he would just get jokes about that.
Yeah.
But no, like I said earlier, where in regards to like the people who made RoboCop Rogue City, which again, like RoboCop isn't it's a film that's from the 80s and it has right-wing ideas, but it's also directed by fucking Paul Verhoeven, a guy who is like, he's not a leftist, but he is like, is kind of near to that you can get within the Hollywood system, and very much knew that what he was making was, well, not even him, but like Ed Neumeyer who wrote it, who was like, a guy who grew up in the 80s, but very much saw that kind of Reaganomics and stuff was leading down this kind of shitty path. And they were all able to tap into that. And so like RoboCop is this perfect sort of thing of, it's bad. Like this is where the world is aiming. But yeah, the reason I mention all that is because obviously the other Verhoeven film that very recently got a game in the form. Well, he did Starship Troopers, and Helldivers very much owes 200% of its identity to that film. And how like all the people came out and was like, "Oh, actually, no, Helldivers is based. I want to live in that world. They seem cool." It's like, oh, fuck.
Completely missing the point. Cool fact about Ed Neumeyer. I have a copy of Cinefantastique magazine here from 1995. The very, very first draft of the Judge Dredd film was written by Ed Neumeyer. He read Judge Dredd, thought it was great, and wanted to make a satiristic action film about a cop who is beyond the realms of normal cops. And so he wrote this script, sold it in. It didn't go anywhere. And the amount of time when you sell a script, I gather you get a certain amount of time that a studio gets to make it. And if they don't make it, you sort of get the idea back. Essentially, this happened. He sold the script in, nothing happened. And so he then adapted his script into RoboCop. So RoboCop started as a Judge Dredd film.
Which makes sense. Kind of the design, the lawgiver being turned into RoboCop's gun, the sort of near future settings, all very...
Police state, kind of rampant consumerism. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Like, just Judge Dredd as an idea has always been relevant. And that also kind of reflects on Rebellion in the fact that, like, most developers that we cover on this podcast are like, oh, well, you know, they were in business for a few years and then, the HD era came along and they kind of, you know, petered out. Or, you know, in the case of Volition, where it's like games became so expensive to make that they could only really make one type of game. And if that didn't work out, then they closed the doors, which was the case with Saints Row became the only guaranteed franchise they had. And when that didn't work out, they just shut the doors. Rebellion, on the other hand, have seemed to have figured something out of maybe they didn't grow too big. Like they kind of kept within a sort of a normal size. They kept their staff on as much as possible as well. But then that becomes a weird thing of like, and we mentioned this when we talked about Right Response and the fact of the Arkham Asylum devs, Rocksteady. If Suicide Squad had become a success, then that would be the damnation of they could only make Suicide Squad after that. And it's like Digital Extremes ended up in a place of they can only make Warframe now. Bungie can only make Destiny. Rebellion are kind of in a place of they do occasionally make a small game, but the thing that they make every couple of years is Sniper Elite. That is their baby, essentially. And while I don't feel so bad about Sniper Elite, because at least that's kind of like in that AA, while they'll do weird experimentations and go off like in different paths on it kind of game, it is still kind of sad that it's like, oh, that is the only kind of guaranteed hit that you guys can do now.
Yeah.
Whereas, I don't know, I would love to see them do a modern... Either them or the guys who made Rogue City, I would love to see them do a modern Judge Dredd game. Yeah. Just because, as we've kept saying, Dredd becomes more relevant, terrifyingly becomes more relevant every single year.
Yeah, exactly that. They bought the whole company nearly 25 years ago now. They own the rights to everything. They released a Judge Dredd game, they released a Rogue Trooper game, and I think that's it. And then they kind of went into monk mode a little bit, and they've kind of taken on to themselves of they're going to go and make some films, they're going to go make some TV series. And slowly we're seeing this stuff come to fruition with Duncan Jones's Rogue Trooper film, which is coming out next year.
But, I didn't know.
Oh, yeah, it's been announced. So he's written and directed it's an animated feature-length Rogue Trooper film. But that's the first one.
Interesting.
You know, that's the first Rebellion thing, and they've been working on this for over a decade because they'd said there was going to be the Mega City 1 TV series coming to Netflix.
Yeah, I saw that's been in the oven for a long while.
That was promised 15 years ago. You know, that, it'll be here in, 5 years, and it just never materialized.
Or whatever,
So it's never happened. But I guess what's interesting is they have this IP. They own it forever, which is fine. They can take their time. But they are sitting on it. And just, I think last year, maybe the year before, they made some social posts where they were like, look, we own this IP. We aren't able to or aren't willing to do anything with it. So basically, we are accepting pitches from indie developers. If you want to make any genre, any kind of game using any 2000 AD IP, get in touch. If it's a good idea, we'll publish it. And I think it's a great, a great call to action to all of the single A, indie, maybe even double A developers out there.
Yeah.
Who want to make a cool game with a cool setting. So it's probably the best thing they can do.
While we're just talking about updated games, though, I'm just like now imagining, their Sniper Elite, like, kill shot tech applied to, the Lawgiver. And while that's a bit lurid, it's like, you've got it right there, especially with the slow-mo effects in the, the Judge Dredd 2012 movie. You can play on that.
But
Judge, we've invented new bullets. They're called X-ray bullets. They show you exactly where the bullets... And they do the lurid kind of... You shoot a guy in the nuts and you see them explode like you do in Sniper Elite.
Do it in...
and then Judge Dredd says nuts to the law or something.
Yeah, or do it with Rogue Trooper. Like, do it in a warlike setting so then you don't have to be worrying about whether or not you're just shooting a shoplifter. Because that's the best thing about Sniper Elite. You get to shoot Hitler in the balls and no one's morally outraged at that. Everyone says, fantastic.
Sorry, I have to correct you. You get to shoot Hitler in the ball.
Can you?
There is only one ball.
Is there really only one ball?
Yeah, because the other
because it's in the Albert Hall.
Because that's all you know. The other is in the Albert Hall. His mother, the dirty poker, in the very big C. That's interesting though that they're lending it out to indie devs because, I can see the Zemansky's taking a stab at something like a Dredd, but then again. We've now gotten to the era where indies are able to make kind of GameCube level stuff. So have we now just come full circle and we're going to get an indie studio come in, make a game that is the exact quality down to the issues that I had with Dredd versus Dev. Just making that again. It's
it will be in Unity this time though.
Yeah. Oh, so it'll cause my laptop to overheat. That's good. Cool. They'll make it in Unity or they'll make it in
Godot.
Yeah.
Godot,
it's Godot, isn't it? Because it's named after.
Some men spend their whole lives waiting for Godot to open.
There you go. Very good.
Bum bum.
There we go.
Well, that was the end of the episode. Thanks, everyone. No. But so I was going to say, so we've kind of ended on talking about how could they bring this back, but I guess the main thing is it's just that how did we all think of the game, and is it something you would recommend somebody to go out and try? I guess
you got 3 hours to spare, cheap on GOG.
Yeah, if you got a train journey from Swansea to London, you could probably knock out Judge Dredd on your Steam Deck.
You know what? It is a kind of crossover thing. If you're a Dredd fan, it's not mine to say whether this would do the job, though. Based on Matty, your response, I think it could do.
Yeah, I would say I would recommend this if you know Judge Dredd and you want to experience a little slice of that Judge Dredd world. It does enough of being accurate with the lore, and it pulls enough interesting things from the lore and puts them together for you there, that there's something for you. And because it doesn't take very long, you can't really be hanging around with it long enough to get disappointed. You're in, you're out, and it's quite a bombastic experience. So it's kind of like a film in that respect. You're not losing anything by giving it a go.
Yeah, well, it seemed more like a kind of like a little cartoon because every single level, despite the fact that you're kind of doing the same thing each time, they do have their own identities. And in the ground, and especially the mall level, you are doing something different for the most part of just rescuing, civvies and, the mindless zombie enemies. And you even stop shoplifters, which is kind of a fun thing.
Yeah.
But
and that's kind of the other group I'd recommend to, because speaking as someone who was a total outsider to Dredd, didn't need any knowledge of it to kind of get the deal. Get what was going on, beyond just a cursory idea of who Judge Dredd was. And do you like schlocky, kind of mid-early 2000s shooters, which if you're listening to this podcast, odds are you might have a passing interest.
Yeah. I had written a funny thing that I might... I'm going to do it in Judge Dredd's voice.
Oh, I can't wait.
Apologies to everyone on this call and who will be listening, but... For the crime of middling graphics, long corridor sections, and mindless shooting, I sentence you to 7 years of the GameCube.
The cube.
Good,
That's
right?
good. That's
Yeah,
good.
the GameCube.
Yeah.
It's funny actually because
I have an ISO file on my GameCube.
this wasn't a game that I had when I was a kid, but I always remembered seeing the ad for this in NGC magazine, because I think this was one of like, well, this is the thing. I always thought that the GameCube never got FPS games because that was the console where like EA gave up on it. It was like, why are we? Nobody's buying your console. Fuck you. And then the Wii comes out and it was like, actually, we've changed our mind. We're going to make games for your console now. But that's not true, because the GameCube got Time Splitters 2 and 3. It got every single Medal of Honor game. It got every single 007. So it got about as many good shooters as the Xbox and the PS2 did. It's just, it didn't have Halo. But on the plus side, it didn't have Killzone. So, like, you know, nothing bad going for it in that case. But, like, yeah, I just remember people really pushing the fact that, like, oh, Dredd versus Death's on the GameCube, and oh, it's an 18 as well. So, you know, Mario doesn't have blood in it. But, yeah, I never ended up renting it, funnily enough. And, I mean, again, I played the GameCube version a little bit for this. Ended up switching over to the PS2 version because it was just a smoother control scheme. So I guess maybe that's my recommendation, is that if you do play this, maybe just play it on PC SX2 for the most part. And again, it is, as Snake said, it is only 3 hours. So
Yeah.
you could race Avengers Endgame to see which one you finish first.
If you want to see a game run in 3000 FPS, meanwhile, so the jump function
Yeah.
doesn't work, buy it on GOG.
God, imagine how quickly you could beat the game at 3000 FPS.
Imagine just how
Well,
well
if only you could
optimized
unlock
that
it in
engine
that
is.
way where, yeah.
Yeah,
3000 FPS. I mean, come on.
that's pretty good.
Where else are you going to see that? Nowhere.
So funny thing is that I did make a note of, so I've done Metacritic reviews as well, but I also had a quick look at GameFAQs, which I haven't done since the Time Splitter series, funny enough, because I was like, this is very much a game of its era, so I kind of want to know what were people saying in 2003, 2004 about Judge Dredd. Mostly positive. The one that I thought was interesting was somebody gave it a 9 out of 10 and said, it's well worth buying if you're a fan of Judge Dredd or first-person shooters. There aren't too many major glitches to mention. As I said before, it's a lot like Time Splitters 2. However, in the gameplay, there is a lot more blood than Time Splitters 2. If you like this game, you might like Duke Nukem 3D, Duke Nukem Time to Kill. And that did make me think, yeah, this game is kind of like, it has got sort of a Duke energy to it, but mostly
Well, it's in the quips, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And you think
Duke isn't a very... Not Duke, sorry. Judge Dredd, he's not very good with wit, is he? Like, his one-liners are just... Yeah. Like, that's wit.
I like him because he's just like straight down the... Like, my favorite thing in the fucking Stallone one was his catchphrase, which was just, I knew you'd say that. I knew you'd say that. It's like, man, did that take you all of 15 seconds to figure out? But they're just blank areas in the script, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta fill these in. I knew you'd say that. But Dredd does, I think Dredd does say that in the game, doesn't he?
Oh, does he? Does he?
I think so,
I don't
yeah.
remember that.
I missed
I mean,
that.
he says a lot.
The line that I remember, the one that just I loved hearing it over and over again as I arrested people, was, "You're getting the big ride."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I just love that fucking stupid line. Or, "You're going away for keeps."
5 years of the cubes. Yeah.
10 years in the cubes.
15 years of the cubes.
So the guy who voiced
Throwing away the key.
the guy who
Oh yeah.
voiced
So
Dredd-
who was the guy who voiced him?
So it's voiced by a guy called Toby Longworth, whose name I didn't know, but I was like, he sounds a lot like the dude who does the voice for Wolverine in the X-Men animated series.
Interesting.
It's not him, but it turns out Toby Longworth was the voice actor for Dredd for the Big Finish audio dramas, which were released
neat.
around this time.
Huh.
If you ever look up Big Finish, they've created audio, like radio plays, for almost every British science
I did not know
fiction.
that we did audio dramas. I thought that was a Japanese.
Oh, no,
yeah,
Snake.
no.
So here's the...
Yeah.
Because Big Finish, I think, was... they worked a lot with a Beeb. Because, yeah, like...
Yes, it is all. It's a
Some
lot
like-
of Beeb stuff. So they've done
Yeah.
Doctor Who, Blake Seven, basically every big British science fiction thing that's come through, as well as not just that, but yeah, lots of other British stuff. But yeah, radio plays obviously a big part of, Archers and Radio 5 culture, that kind of thing.
Of course,
Well,
yeah.
I was gonna
I knew about that.
Yeah.
But it's funny with like when adapting comic book media or thingy media, I did not know that was a thing that
Snake,
we did.
if you get a time to find it, and I don't know if it's still out there, but I listened to it a little bit before I did the Gotham games. There was a Beeb adaptation of Batman Nightfall, which is the comic
so
where
good.
he gets his back. Where he gets his spine broken by Bane.
Yeah.
Yeah, the voice, it is really good.
Yeah, that's really, really good. That audio drama.
And it is just because like here's the I mean, this is going off in the weeds a little bit, but I always laugh about this when I think of so you have American actors and they either kind of come from kids television, or it's just oh, this guy was on set a lot, so we just put him in the film and he's now become one of our consummate like Harrison Ford was a fucking carpenter, and they're like, hey, you look good in front of a camera. Let's you're Han Solo now.
He did Francis Ford Coppola's Kitchen.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, literally fucking or it's nepotism where it's oh, Nicolas Cage. Oh, who's your uncle? Oh, the guy who directed The Godfather. Yeah, sure, you can be in this film. Hey, I'm sure you'll be good. This is in the UK where even if you want to just be a news presenter, you have to be a triple threat, as in acting, singing, dancing.
Yeah.
If you go to RADA, or if you go to Emily Conte or whatever it's called, you have to learn those 3 disciplines to just do any. So even Hugh Laurie and fucking what's he called, the guy who was on The Walking Dead, they're just trained singers and dancers as well. It's fucked.
So I looked up the voice because I was like, I don't know this guy. So it led me to Big Finish audio dramas. Turns out there are a lot of Judge Dredd audio dramas by Big Finish. And they predate this game. They're already going. They're already well established. So every member of the cast is the Big Finish audio cast. So it's people who already played the characters. They already knew what they were about, and they just plugged them straight in, got going.
Great attention to detail.
Which, I think that's a really nice thing. Big Finish is a funny thing. In one of my previous jobs, I've worked adjacent to Big Finish audio, and actually they are. The Blake 7 audio drama is the first time I'd ever heard of Benedict Cumberbatch. So before he was a big film star, he was a voice actor, and he voices a character in the Blake 7 Big Finish audio dramas. And I like to think that I'm one of the first people in the world who made funny jokes at the expense of Benedict Cumberbatch's name. Because way back in 2002, I was calling him, Benedictine Cummerbund or whatever, all the stupid, silly memes. I think I was the first person doing that.
Sad to say, you could have got you could be at IGN for the past 20
Exactly
years.
Right. I could have had a Tumblr account. I could have got so many tens of thousands of followers.
You could have been the British Harry Knowles.
Perish the thought.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I know. Do you want to take a guess what this game has as a average Metascore?
Oof. I'm going to go... Snake, do you want to go first?
I genuinely can't even begin to guess, but I'm going to throw out what I think is a safe 68.
Wow.
I'm going 68.
I'm going a lot lower. I'm going 41.
Ooh. I'm not sure who's closest, but smack bang in the middle of both of you is 57.
Oh.
Is the
wow.
That is the Xbox grade, and that is the highest grade it got, but it is mostly in the mid 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think Snake's
people did not like this game. Some areas of complaints were weak AI, lackluster graphics, overly bizarre character models, and simplistic gameplay. However, the game was praised for its multiplayer, which just
overly bizarre character models is a sign of weakness to me.
Yeah, I don't think. If anything, the bizarre character
good.
models has made it aged very well.
Yeah, those are the things.
Stylization, get it away.
Oh, there's a big guy. Boo! I only want characters to look like Lara Croft.
A man's chin couldn't ever be that big. 1 out of 10, unplayable.
But they did like the fact that there was a bunch of arcade modes, mostly just much like I did, just a lot of people comparing it to Time Splitters.
This game had co-op, which I genuinely could not imagine playing this in co-op, which is a shame.
Yeah,
very funny.
It feels perfect in a way to have 2 cops running about causing a ruckus.
Yeah, true. You'd have Dredd and a rookie.
Yeah,
like, on
well,
their
see,
first date,
it was
yes.
actually someone on the Discord, on the Bullet Time Discord, who actually said, because I was
Ooh,
like,
yeah.
who's the other player? Because I was like, this is a great opportunity for a nice law-friendly other judge.
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out the
Yeah.
other player is Judge Rico, who is
Yeah.
who is a Judge Dredd and Rico, or Joe Dredd and Rico Dredd. They are both clones of Judge Fargo. So in universe, they are brothers. They are identical twins. They're both clones of a previous judge. And that's a really great little, again, a great little thing, a nod to the law. It makes it way more confusing because actually from the first Judge Dredd comic, Rico was already in the past. Rico had already, like in the film, Rico had already been arrested and imprisoned and locked away and disgraced. So the idea that you are running about the city with Rico means it must be set in quite the ancient past. So I don't think they give a shit about canon, and that's fine. That's good.
Oh, no.
It's actually just very cool.
Did you? That just sent you on a little mental rabbit hole.
Well, yeah, I know. I love doing this thing. Like this fires so many synapses in my brain where I'm like, could this have happened? When does this happen? What's the reality? But what it is, it's a great excuse to just have the exact same character model, and they just change the badge.
Yeah.
It's just the texture.
It's the one thing that annoys me about the Judge Dredd film, which, I mean, whatever, it's a film from the 90s, so they spent all their money on fucking stage production. They didn't really care about much else. Except that they did give Stallone blue contacts.
Yes.
And it does genuinely change the shape of his face, which fucked me up in a
Yeah,
really
so he
weird
looks
way.
more like Max von Sydow.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's why they gave him the
'Cause
blue
he's
contacts.
a
so
clone
he
of
does
Max
look,
von Sydow, yeah.
yeah, and like even though the fact that he looks nothing
And his identical twin is Armand Desante.
yeah, who also looks nothing like him and has a foot on him, but like but that film's great because it's just like Stallone is like, yeah, I can ham it up. I could play, I could do loud.
Yeah.
And then you have Armand Desante, who is just like the moment he appears on screen, he's just screaming.
Yeah, he's 1,000 feet tall. He's so good.
He is just complete. It's like, so why did he go to jail? Oh, he's unhinged.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about that. And you watch like 13 seconds of him and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I guess he's pretty unhinged. Fair enough. But, yeah, so reviews-wise, the most positive one was 75 from Play Magazine, which I think was the PlayStation kind of unofficial magazine of its time, which just said, the adventure adult gameplay is pure Dredd 2, and the story Dark Judges have risen is very cool.
What a review.
Very cool. Yeah, what a positive review from them. 68 from Game Informer, who said, Judge Dredd scores a minor victory in its ability to let its roots show through amid the usually indistinguishable mess of guns and guts. Which
That sounds fair.
I'd agree.
They were quite cynical on the shooter genre at that moment.
Oh, well, I mean, again, it's what you went back to earlier when you were saying about like this is what sums up bullet time for you, where it's like I think of like the 360 era, but this was very much like the PS2 era where everyone was having a go at doing PS2 stuff. And yeah, if you're Game Inform, you're like, oh fuck, this is all shit. Because I think they gave like the original Battlefront games bad reviews as well, but those games are good.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are bangers.
Yeah, so don't know what's wrong with them. The worst, well, not the meanest review, because I saved that for something else, but 50 from IGN, which just says, for those starved action gamers in need of an immediately accessible fix, there is still some strange sense of joy to be found in pointlessly gunning down the minions of evil in colourful environments, which
Yeah.
isn't incorrect.
Yeah, the latter levels certainly feel like that.
Yeah. But funnily enough, the meanest review, which I forgot to paste, but I found it again. Maxim Online, the review house that we all agree with, where they get page-free babes to review the games. 40. But for the crimes of middling graphics and dollars dirt gameplay, we sentence Dredd versus Death to the internal burial in the discount bin at Costco. Court adjourned.
Wow.
We have Costco?
Apparently,
The
well,
bargain
I
bin
guess
at
Maxim in the
Costco.
States does.
In the States, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot Lad Mags would be sold over there as well.
I think the US kind of invented them, and then they
Yeah,
import-
true.
We
Maybe I'm
gave
just trapped in thinking of them as Lad Mags, ergo trapped to the UK.
That's true, because the Americans don't say lad, do they? They think
No.
like lad means something else over there.
I don't know what they'd call it. They probably have a colloquialism that isn't as good as ours.
Hey, have you been reading the latest Dude Tube? I sure have. Have you been reading the latest Man Mag? There's a review in here about Judge
Man
Dredd.
Mags
Man Mag.
implies something very
I
different.
would say,
Man Mag.
I think I aspire to be the first dude tuber. That sounds great.
Oh yeah, Dude Tube is a good. I'm if
You're gonna need a surfboard.
I was gonna say, do you wanna get the Dude Tuber domain name in before this this episode goes live? All right.
Dude.tube.
Dude.tube. I haven't really got much final thoughts on it, apart from I think I'm a bit more positive on it than the Metacritic average, but I would also say, like, not the best. Like, this is pure down the middle bullet time in regards to nowhere as good as Time Splitters, but also a lot better than, say, like Legendary. I still think is like the classic dud that we've ever covered on Bullets, or even Haze. Like,
This game isn't boring, which, having played a lot of actually boring games, gives it a leg up.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the fact that it is short also is a benefit. Probably wasn't back when it was released, where people were like, why isn't this 30 hours long? No, it being 3 hours is absolutely fine in this day and age, I think. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's okay. I'm glad I did play it for the podcast. And again, it was a nice chance to sort of, like, this is the first Rebellion game we covered. We will probably cover more soon. I mean, Snake, at some point, we do need to, probably maybe for the 50th episode or whatever, we do need to pop the cork of Rogue Warrior.
Oh god, yeah. Jesus.
Dick Marcenko,
we
colon.
tried to pop the cork, but the cork said no, I'm staying in.
We kept popping the cork, but the wine had turned to fucking vinegar by the time we got to it. Like, that was the problem.
We popped the cork, but every time we popped the cork, instead of going pop, it said the F slur.
Oh.
Yeah, it called us
Put the cork
pussies.
back.
You
popped the cork and it said, think you're fucking special, huh?
Oh, I think you're fucking special. Shut your fucking mouth. I'm gonna kick your fucking mouth. And so, oh, hold on. Slow
Stop
down there.
rapping.
Sorry, Dick. Matt, you know about Rogue Warrior, right?
I do know about Rogue Warrior, yes.
God, we've had a lot of people asking whether they could come on the Rogue Warrior.
Oh, God.
episode. It's gonna. Maybe we should do a special thing of maybe we'll just keep cycling out guests so they can all keep talking about Rogue Warrior. This is like,
And then you compile the episode from assorted bits about
yo,
Rogue Warrior.
yeah. What if I did them as like when I do my end of year specials where I do the round table, but I do it like it sounds like everyone's talking to. Or why don't we just have a 20-person call for
Yes.
Rogue Warrior? There we go.
Yes.
And
That's the
we can ask the question: Rogue Trooper versus Rogue Warrior.
Yeah.
Who's taking it home?
I'm gonna give it to Rogue Trooper, and I haven't played it.
Oh, I mean in an actual fight, not which game is better.
Oh, it's
But
I'm
I guess
giving
I'd
it
still
to-
give it to
Oh, I'm
Rogue
giving it to Rogue
Trooper.
Trooper.
Yeah.
I mean,
Genetically
Not the guy
modified.
who's dead now.
Yeah.
yeah, Dick Marzenko's been dead for a good few years, but even while he was alive, I think probably Rogue Trooper could have taken it. I mean, guy was a clone, you know?
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
more him than there were Dick Marzenko.
At least, Rogue Trooper, he didn't have to make his own little toy figures of himself, whereas Dick Marcinko,
That's true.
that man made action figures of himself.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I also know that he was part of Red Cell, which is what Dead Cell in MGS2 is named after.
Mm.
He would have been a good boss fight in Metal Gear Solid 2. Probably would have raised the age rating a bit, though.
Listen, I just need to get over to the other strut. Fuck you. Who the fuck do you think you are? I'm gonna come over there and cut your fucking throat. I'm gonna rip your nuts off. I'm gonna rip your fucking throat. And there's like a Kojimaism where it's like, if you turn the console off during his speech, he actually dies. It's like,
Oh, good.
yeah, thanks. Oh no, if you set your console date to like 2014 or whatever it was where Dick Marcenko died, he dies in game. Oh, Kojima, you scamp. How did you know?
You cheeky scamp.
You cheeky-
control.
Speaking of cheeky stamps, let's do the quiz now. Quick question.
Go.
Where so this would have guaranteed for the charts the week of as I quickly scroll up. The 17th of October, 2003. We're using UK chart track for this because that goes all the way back. And plus, we've got 2 Brits on the pod, so why not? Now, where do you think this qualified for the charts that week?
I mean,
Number 40.
Snake, you're going for 40.
How many?
So,
I'm
yes.
going like it charted at all.
So,
okay,
just checking, because I made this mistake on the Punisher pod. The chart is 40,
Sure.
right?
it goes up to 40. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Matty, higher or lower?
Lower, but...
And by
but-
lower, I mean didn't
but
chart.
no, higher than, but marginally. I'm going to say low 30s. 37.
Matty, double points to you. It literally charted at number 37
Get
this
in.
week.
Whoa!
It's in.
That is fucking impressive.
That's
so,
amazing.
So from Rebellion and publishers Sierra and Vivendi Universal Games, Judge Dredd, Dredd vs. Death for 37. Now, here's the thing that I was really excited to talk about. Do you want to take a guess what's at number 36 above it? I'm going to give you a clue. It's not a game, it's PC software.
Oh, God.
Microsoft Encarta 2003?
Photoshop CS1.
Neither of those.
Okay.
Okay, I'll give you an easier clue. It's antivirus.
No.
McAfee?
It is Norton Internet Security 2004. Now,
Slightly
they're doing
more
a
popular
FIFA.
than
They're doing a
Judge
FIFA where
Dredd.
they're naming it
Uh-huh.
1 year ahead.
yeah, they are. They're doing yearly releases of Norton. Now, even funnier, number 38, which is just below Judge Dredd. It is by Focus Essential and Focus Multimedia. It's a piece of software that you would give to somebody who needs to pass. Somebody who might be the age of 17 who wants to pass a
Pass
test.
a driving
Oh, it's going to
exam.
be driving
software.
testing.
Yeah, it is driving test success theory.
It just sits
Just
neatly
Dredd
between-
nearly managed to beat out driving test success
I'm going to
theory.
say, a couple months later, someone must have had a very disappointing Christmas.
Yeah. But hopefully they pass
Well,
the driving
son,
test.
you asked for what was 38 on the charts, and here it is. No, I said 37. Damn it. Son, why didn't you ask for 36? That must have been a better game.
So that's the next essay. Judge Dredd, better or worse than literal software?
Yeah, the GFK considered it worse than Norton. Not even Norton Antivirus is 35. Norton Internet Security is 36. So it wasn't even
on there
better than
twice.
Internet Security.
Wow.
I guess they're all about isolating things.
I guess that's true. Yeah. When you think about it, Internet Security is kind of like a Judge Dredd.
It is, yeah.
It sends pop-ups to the cubes.
Yeah.
Is also executioner, judge, jury, and executioner.
That is true. Oh, I forgot to mention, but Matty, I think you already knew this, but because I always thought the name Judge Dredd was funny, but yeah, he's named after a
Reggae artist, yeah.
Judge Dredd.
Actually, I think John Wagner already created a comic book character named after Judge Dredd.
Yes.
It wasn't like the futuristic Judge Dredd, it was just another character, and it never went anywhere. And then he created a futuristic lawman to go into 2003, and they go, what do you want to call him? He's like, Judge Dredd again. I didn't have a hit last time I tried to rip off this reggae artist, so I'm going to have another shot at it. I really
Yeah,
want a
you know what?
character who rips off this reggae artist.
Throw another marble on the roulette table. Let's see how this one goes.
Yeah. It was going to happen one day or another.
Absolutely. But anyways, we might as well do the other 10 on the charts. So starting with number 1, which is brand new this week, is buzzers at the ready. It is a sports game.
Madden.
FIFA.
It's not FIFA and it's not Madden, but it is a soccer game.
Oh, Pro Evo.
Yeah, it is Pro Evolution Soccer free from Konami and Konami, the publisher and developer. Now, down one place, number 2 this week, is another sports game, but I'll give you a clue. It's not American football and it's not soccer, but it is a game with a ball.
Cricket.
It's not cricket.
NBA.
It is not basketball.
Baseball?
It's not baseball.
Oh, God.
Rugby.
It's not rugby. I'll give you a clue. It is a sport. It is I'll give you a clue as well. So it is an EA game, and It's a sport that's named after a disgraced player.
Is it Tiger Woods?
It is Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004.
Terrible sport. Should be abolished. Get rid of it.
Genuinely should. Golf is like, it's just using land. It is like the old... Again, speaking of Judge Dredd and like the extremes of like kind of poverty and whatever, golf is like that is fucking farce.
Golf carts should be recycled into racing vehicles so we can have fun golf cart races and we get rid of golf courses. Fuck 'em.
The only golf that should exist is mini golf, because that is golf for the people.
That's right.
We should know. We got to abolish golf and rename mini golf golf. That's the only golf.
Yeah, good. I like that.
Wait, they should do it like with the McFlurries, where they renamed them from McFlurry and Small McFlurry to McFlurry and Large McFlurry.
Yes.
There should be golf and then big golf.
It's almost like a Demolition Man kind of thing. Like if you got frozen and then you woke up 50 years in the future and someone says, we're going to go play golf. You're expecting one thing and then you go, wait, this is mini golf. And they go, oh, no, we renamed this like 50 years ago. This is just regular golf now.
I don't know why, but I'm just imagining Stallone in the car being just like, oh yeah, I love golf. Golf's my favorite sport. What the hell is this? This is putt-putt golf. No, we don't call it that. We call it, this is what I like to play. I'm going to go to the driving range. But one doesn't exist, so he just starts fucking hitting fucking golf balls into cars. God. I hope you all enjoyed me writing a sequel to Demolition Man. My own
He
podcast.
goes to play golf.
Down one place to number 3 is a game series that literally does not exist anymore. It's from Codemasters. It is a sports game.
Is it a driving game? Is it Toka Touring Cars?
Rally.
So no, here's a clue. So no driving. It is not a sport that you would associate with Codemasters. It is a ball sport, and it's one that's already been guessed.
Is it? Oh wait, it's not Madden then, because that's not Codemasters.
No, it's not Madden.
Is it a basketball game?
It's not a basketball game.
Not associated with Codemasters. Is it another golf? Well,
It's not another golf game. It's the other one.
Is it cricket? Is it
It's
Brian
not
Lara?
cricket.
Oh.
No, it is not.
Is it another soccer game?
Yeah, it is, and I'll give you that. It is a game that's literally called club football.
Oh my god, never would have guessed.
God,
Snake, don't tell me you own that game.
I owned Arsenal, and hey, you got to remember, I was posting it. We did a meet-up with a bunch of other British YouTubers, and I kind of did a kind of PS2 crap bag, as I called it, where everyone got like a bag that had 2 random PS2 games in it. I didn't remember what any of them, like which order or collection any of them were in. And one of them was going to be the Celtic club football game.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, one of the rarer copies. And by rarer, I mean goes for about £2 at CEX instead of 25p. So,
oh god, yeah, you've explained the story before, where basically like their whole selling point was that obviously EA had the market cornered on FIFA, but then Codemasters thing was like, well, like they could sell these as like merchandise in football shops. So it's like, hey, we can kind of make one for every team, because literally all you do is change out the menu and make one team artificially change
more
the textures,
important. Yeah, change the textures out. So I had the Arsenal one. It is not a good football game. They were not going to compete with FIFA or Pro Evo on gameplay. Plays are terrible. Kim Justice does a good video on like comparing all the football games.
Yeah,
of
her
that
football
era,
games are
so
brilliant.
she's kind of she's got that market cornered. But essentially, I was going to bring along Celtic was going to be in the crap bag, but I mentioned it to my dad, and funnily enough,
you wanted
merchandise. My dad is a Celtic fan. He knows a lot of Celtic fans. One of them who just collects any old Celtic thing. He was like, oh, can my mate have that? And I was like, yeah, okay. So
sure.
that fell out of circulation because I wasn't going to say no. Because that way it can go to someone who might,
I might actually appreciate. I'm generally trying to remember the 2 games that I got. I mean, they were both PS2 ones, but like, I don't think it was America's Most Wanted. I think there was a lucky boy who got that, I think, but which wasn't.
I think Sam was the winner, or whoever got Super Monkey Ball, which one of them.
That was Sam.
No, Sam got the Getaways, which.
Oh yeah, he got both Getaways. Maybe it might be Mark Brown who got it. I don't know. That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah,
I'll try and remember which ones I got. Speaking of PS2 games, by the way. Number 4, down 1 place from 3 last week, is from London's Sony London Studios, a game that used a peripheral.
iToy.
It is iToy
Nice.
Play from Sony Computer
Play?
Entertainment. Yeah, it was.
That was a very
very niche
dodgy
game.
spin-off, the Play one.
Well, I mean, it was one of those things like you remember where they had that program where you could do protein folding at home on your PS3.
Oh,
to, like,
yes.
figure out
Yeah.
cancer.
This one taught you about colonoscopies with
Yeah,
the
so this
iToy.
is
With
the
the
same
iToy.
thing. You put the iToy up your butt.
They could have
and
made
it's,
it a bit slimmer, though, the iToy. It's quite a girthy.
yeah, they never end up releasing that models.
But it does have a flanged base, so they knew what they were doing.
I mean, you want to know what's worse? They made an iToy Play 2, so it was successful enough to get
Got
a sequel.
The worst one was when they did iToy Play Ape Escape Edition.
I thought the worst one was iToy Groove, which I didn't want to know about that.
I just like the idea of you just trying to do an colonoscopy, but rather than a doctor being like giving you actual information, it's just the apes from Ape Escape reacting. Like if it's got a red siren on his head, it's like that means I saw a lump.
If I wanted anyone to break the news to me, it would be the Ape Escape apes.
You'd want a people monkey to. You'd be like, okay, doctor, what's the news? But then it gets started and it's running around the room and you're trying to grab him.
And they're like, it might just be a polyp. It's probably fine.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It
Don't
might
worry.
be benign.
Yeah.
It's benign or bananas, we don't know
Oh my
which.
god, yes.
That's what they should have called the fourth one. Ape Escape 4.
Benign or banana.
Banana bananas. Number 5 this week, down from 4 from last week, from publisher SCI, which I think we talked about.
Ooh.
They were like IDOS's
Yep, the
sort of
Carmageddon.
bosses, but yeah, that's right. They were the Carmageddon guys. But this is a game by Pivotal Games. It is. I don't know exactly if it's a first-person shooter or a third-person shooter, so I guess I'll just say that it is definitely a shooter, and it is a series from this era that we don't see anymore.
Siphon Filter.
It is not Siphon Filter because that is
that one's
Sony and
That's
Bend.
third person stealth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually know much about SCI off the dome, so I'm
This
gonna be
is
swinging.
this is a shooter franchise which I think we've talked about on the pod before. This was like one of the biggest names of this era that just does not exist now. And again, like it's one of those stupid ones where literally the name of the franchise is like a synonym for like combat.
Oh,
Yeah.
Huh. Wow, I'm blanking.
yeah, same.
Combat.
I'll give you a clue. So it's a synonym for combat, and then like a war that happened in very recent memory.
Oh, conflict Vietnam, maybe.
It's not. It is conflict, but it's not conflict Vietnam.
Desert Ops.
Conflict Desert
You're
Storm.
very close.
Conflict Desert Storm.
Yes, it is conflict
Ah.
Desert Storm 2.
Oh.
from Pivotal
Yeah, God,
Games.
that was a genre that it died around the 360 because I think around the time the last one I remember was like Denied Ops when they were trying to get in on
Yeah.
like Black Ops but couldn't crack it.
So I was going to say, it's like a third-person tactical shooter, right?
Yeah,
Like
I mean I don't know if
kind
they.
of vibe, or
Yeah,
the
that's what I
earlier
thought it
ones
was.
the earlier ones were a bit more PS2 realism. Let's say they weren't up
Sure.
to SOCOM like tactical standards. I think it did go first person because I think I played the demo for Denied Ops and they were trying to go more Call of Duty. So it was very much like a B-lister follower series of just what's doing okay at the moment. We're gonna try and be that, but never really get there.
From what I assumed, it was kind of like Rainbow Six, but set outside.
I will say this, and I've told this on the pod before, but it will never not be funny to me because me and a mate, we co-op completed Conflict Desert Storm. The first level of Conflict Desert Storm, you are saving a POW. Player 2 is the POW, so you can't do shit for the first level. You just sit in a cell for the whole first level while player 1 comes to get you.
And it's like it's
shit.
like the Lego games, just half the screen is just occupied by fucking nothing.
Yeah, you're just sat in a cell like, oh boy, I'm having such a fun introduction to this co-op experience.
just pooing in a bucket, waiting to be rescued.
Oh boy, I can't wait to be rescued.
You
Oh,
don't
wait.
get to have the bucket.
Yeah. Number 6 this week, up from number 14 last week, so it's going up the charts, is a kids game based on the popular Pixar film of this year.
Oh,
2003.
the fish one. Finding Nemo?
It is Finding Nemo from Traveler's Tales and Disney Interactive. Good job.
I didn't know that had a game.
Oh,
Of
Traveler's
course it had
Tales
a
was
game.
Yeah.
They all
No,
had
of course
games.
it- no,
this
it's
is
like
definitely
that-
the era when they were still making games for nearly everything, I think.
So like Traveler's Tales were fucking cranking them out because don't forget they did the Bugs Life and Toy Story 2 game
Yeah.
on PS1, which were fucking bangers. But then they did Monsters Inc. and they did Nemo, and like at that point I was just like, oh, those are films for babies. I only play adult games
Yeah.
like Super Mario Sunshine on the GameCube.
Yeah.
So I was very much not on board with that. But no, Traveler's Tale kept it going up until the Lego games,
Yeah.
which kind of makes sense considering where Star Wars ended up.
I think
you know,
they were
Disney.
also Oxford based at this point in time, so they would have been down the road
They-
from Rebellion.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention a detail with Rebellion, which was that, and it doesn't matter too much, but when we were talking about Riot Response with Sam, but obviously Lara Croft Tomb Raider was like Eidos's biggest kind of like boon at that time from core design, but then they did Angel of Darkness, and that kind of went off the rails, so they ended up giving Lara to, what are they called? Crystal Dynamics.
Oh, yeah.
Core design ended up at Rebellion and got renamed as Rebellion Derby,
Mm.
and now they have all of the core design IP that isn't Tomb Raider, such as BC Races and
Yeah, what else? What else do Core have?
yeah, that's it.
And pause.
And I was gonna say and pause number 7 on the yeah, but, yeah, no, they don't have anything.
Chuck
I think
Rock?
they ended up close. Oh yeah, well I guess Chuck Rock
I
is
don't
part
have
of
one
the beat.
near me.
Is that part of the BC
Yeah.
Races cinematic universe?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, Snake, I did hear your joke, and I quite like.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear Snake.
It's
You
fine.
said Chuck Rock, and he said, "I don't have one near me."
Oh, good.
Number 7 on the charts, up from 13 last week, is from Electronic Arts, an FPS game.
Electronic Arts FPS.
Remember the era that we're in?
Mm.
It's 2003. Very
James
much when.
Bond, Nightfire.
Oh, I wish it is not James Bond Nightfire.
Medal of Honor?
It is a Medal of Honor, but which one?
Is it the Japan one?
It is not Rising Sun. It's the
Oh.
one before that, I believe.
Frontlines?
It is Medal of
Oh.
Honor Frontline
Well done.
from 2015 Games and
I
Electronic
don't know
Arts.
how that title stuck in my memory. Genuinely no idea. It's very generic.
2015, who I can't remember whether they went on. They either went on to form Danger Close, or they became part of Danger Close because it was EA Los Angeles, or they were the ones that then spun off to become part. Oh no, because Infinity Ward were they were the guys that made Allied Assault. I could be wrong though. So 2015 might have been one of the ones that didn't go on to do anything apart from Medal of Honor Frontline. I haven't played Frontline. The only Medal of Honor game that I've played recently is Airborne. That one's pretty good.
Mm.
It's a bit like playing a big multiplayer map, but it's a single player game. Should do it on the pod at some point. We'll figure out when. Here's a game that we can't do on the pod because it's a fighting game. Number 8 this week, down from 5. A fighting game from Namco.
Tekken. 6.
It's not Tekken.
Oh. What?
Oh god, what else do they do?
What else have Namco
Oh, this
ever
one.
done?
This is a franchise that doesn't.
King of Fighters.
Because that's SNK.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm out of my element. Oh.
This is a franchise that they used to do, but like seem to have forgotten exists. I'll give you a clue. Its unique selling point was weapons.
Soul Calibur.
Which one?
3.
Not 3.
Oh, 2.
Soul Calibur 2 from Namco.
Yeah.
The one that famously
Oh, is that
had,
Link?
if you bought the GameCube. Yeah, if you bought the GameCube version, you could play as Link from Zelda.
Yeah, if you
bought
got the
PS2 version,
Xbox version, you could play as Spawn from Image
not
Comics
only could you play
Oh
as
my
Spawn,
God.
and
but you could
Yoshimitsu.
also play as a character that was designed by Todd McFarlane, who was just a big fucking guy with a chain. Like,
Yeah.
man, how long did it take you to come up with that, Todd? all of a Friday afternoon.
And then I
Good
think
job.
the PS2 version has Yoshimitsu, I think, and Heihachi.
Yeah, so like that was the funny thing with the PS2 version was just like, hey Sony, do you have any like IP? No,
And they're like, yeah,
oh, it's just my Heihachi in it then.
Tekken.
What the Tekken guy?
Put Ratchet in there.
Oh yeah, Ratchet would have been
That
good,
would have
especially
been
if they had
really
kept
good.
his height.
Well, because 4 they
Like, if he
started
was just a
putting
little
Star Wars
3-foot
characters
guy,
in,
like-
didn't they?
You're talking about his height. Like, do you remember that it was one of the games after that that had Yoda in it?
Yeah,
and he
that's
was really
4.
fucking annoying.
Yeah, well, it only had Yoda. It also had Darth Vader, but more famously, Starkiller from the
Yeah,
Force
the
Unleashed games.
secret
What a
apprentice.
failed multimedia project.
That wasn't failed. That made loads of money.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I
I'm
think it did
talking
okay.
in like a longevity, memorability. Actually, I don't know. I'm not a
You're,
Star
you're
Wars
talking
fan,
about the
so-
Avatar effect of who's still talking about the Force Unleashed.
I'm being that kind of prick by doing that, I'll admit.
I told the story before of one of my lecturers at university worked on the Force Unleashed, and they were testing a level out, and the QA people coming back, and it's like it's running really slowly. And they had a look, and what had happened was the environmental artist had accidentally duplicated the level 3 times on top of it.
Fantastic.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna adjust what I said because I reflexively called it what a failed multimedia project because I played one and I liked it, and I played 2 and thought this is dog ass.
Oh,
Yeah,
I like 2 a
That
lot.
was my barometer. I don't know why. I genuinely don't know why. I got it for Christmas one year and I played like 2 hours. I was like, I really hate this.
Wow.
And I could never quite. And thinking back on it, I have no idea what about it
And if
was like really not gelling.
if you
with
played
me.
it for 2 hours, you got halfway through it. It's a really short game.
yeah, it's not a long game.
Can't be said I didn't give it a fair shake then if I experienced 50% of it.
It was a pretty luxurious demo. You got like half the game playing it. So. Number 9 up from number 10 last week is another sports game.
I'm just gonna go Madden again. I'm just gonna keep
It's
saying
not
Madden
Madden,
until
it's
it
the
comes
A lot of
true.
sports. These are UK charts, so Madden has a pretty big disadvantage.
That's absolutely right.
FIFA?
It is FIFA 2003 from EA Canada. And
Wow,
Electronic
Pro
Arts.
Evo was taking FIFA this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was the thing that people always forget, but like Pro Evo was bigger in the UK than FIFA.
Yeah, it was-
And
it
literally
weren't
the
great
only
guns.
reason FIFA was only able to overtake it when Konami forgot how to make video games. So.
Mm.
when Hideo Kojima said, "Hey, can you filter all of your money onto the Fox engine GS5?" And I'm like, all right, but this game better be good. You crazy
We'll
bastard.
use it for one Pro Evo, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's right. And then and so the latest Pro Evo, which is now called like Konami Esports Football, and no one's fucking playing it, is now done in the Unreal Engine.
Oh my god.
What time?
Oh, God,
Whereas
you
the
could
new
take
FIFA
Unreal Unlocker into it.
Oh
Probably
yeah,
not.
that'd be
Probably
good.
not.
Fly the camera around. Whereas EAFC, I think, is made in Frostbite, because that was the weird thing that EA mandated everybody use that engine, even though it was only good for FPS games. Speaking of
I
only
really
good for
stupidly, naively thought when the FIFA license went up, I was like, maybe there'll be a return of the mid. Not that I'd play them, but I'd love to see just a return of the like middleware football market. But no, it
Ooh,
didn't
yeah.
happen.
I thought you were going to say when EA announced that they were going to use Frostbite in FIFA, like the
They would
ball
have
would have.
destructible walls.
Yeah, you'd be able to like blow up the goal.
That'd be good too. That would be a good gimmick for a football game. That'd be like a Red Card 2 kind of deal.
Or like Mutant League Soccer or something
yeah,
like
that
that.
was
Like,
good.
you know, the bomb is like
Yeah.
the ball is like an explosive and you can kick it.
Did
into
they
the
ever
stands
do
and
like a
blow
big
it up.
crazy no rules football game? Because they did it for like basketball, they did it for hockey, they did it for
So
NFL.
yeah, Snake List. So Midway obviously did NBA Jam, and then they were like, "How can we apply this to other sports?" And one of them was the GameCube game. Well, I guess it was PS2 and Xbox as well. Red Card,
Right.
which was just kind of like no rules soccer.
Right. Yeah, I
You
missed
could
that.
turn the referee off, and you could do like super attacks on other players.
Oh, that
It's
sounds great.
not a great game, but it is very funny.
Did we try playing on stream once and it didn't?
I
work?
played it once with Swede for a bit.
Yeah.
With lag, it's not a great experience for the other
No.
player.
Well, hey, you're meeting him in person soon. You'll be able to make him play Red
So yeah, I
Card.
got to
Soccer.
break out a GameCube and right, we're playing Red Card for real.
You're gonna send them to 30 minutes in the cubes.
Yes.
And then finally, down from 8 last week to number 10, is a first-person shooter. Now, technically it was developed by Gearbox, but is actually an Xbox game that they did a port of.
Brothers in Arms?
It's not Brothers in Arms.
No, they made that in-house, didn't they, Gearbox?
Correct.
Half-Life.
It is not Half-Life.
No, because they did... No, someone else did Half-Life 2 on Xbox.
Yeah.
And Half-Life was already a PC game.
Yeah.
This is taking
And
an
it's next year.
This is the opposite. This is putting an Xbox game on the PC.
Deus Xbox.
It is not Deus Ex Invisible War.
Invisible War. So wait, they were putting an Xbox game on the PC.
Correct.
And it's an FPS.
Yes. An FPS that is being evoked a lot during this episode.
They didn't port Halo 2, did they? Or Halo 1? No, that was
Not Halo
that's a year
2,
off.
but yeah, it might have been Halo 1 if you can remember the subtitle of it.
Combat Evolved.
Custom Edition.
I will give it to Matty because people always think Halo CE stands for Custom Edition. That's incorrect. The CE stands for Combat Evolved.
But isn't Custom Edition like something that comes with Combat Evolved on the PC?
I
for
believe
modding?
so.
Halo
Yeah, it was
CE,
something that
CE.
the. Yeah, I think it was. It was Halo CE. I always thought that was a fan thing that they called it Custom Edition, but you might be right. That is maybe what the PC tools are called. So that's fair enough. But yeah, people often forget fucking Gearbox, obviously Borderlands and Brothers in Arms, but probably more famously, getting Half-Life on the consoles and getting Halo on the PC. So-
And Gearbox did make the Half-Life add-on campaigns, Blue Shift and why can't I remember?
Oh,
the good
Covert
one?
Ops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Opposing
I can only
Force?
remember Blue Shift, not the campaign.
Sorry, Opposing Force.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
They did.
They're all because they're all very funnily named after scientific concepts.
Yeah.
Except for Alex, which breaks the trend. And I guess episode 1 and 2, so fuck it.
Yeah. Did they also make Decay?
Decay was a custom campaign for PS2 that had co-op, and was funnily enough my first exposure to Half-Life.
Oh.
Was
Oh.
No, okay. I might have told this story before on the pod. My first exposure to Half-Life wasn't just playing Decay. It was going around a mate's house, and he had played to the final level of Decay with someone else, didn't finish it, and said, let's just finish this. So just launching into the final mission of Decay to finish it, which sucked.
Wow.
So you just played the final level of Half-Life Decay and you was just like, well, I guess that was my Half-Life
I
experience.
guess I know
Well,
everything about Half-Life now.
It would be several more years before I played like Half-Life 2 and then went back and played Half-Life 1 after.
Gosh.
My first Half-Life experience, a friend of mine lived up the road, gave me a burnt CD-ROM with about 40 PC games on it, Half-Life being one of them.
Oh shit.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was a powerful
What else
summer
was
for
on the
me.
disc?
Well, Jesus, what else was on there?
Yeah.
Requiem Avenging Angel, that was one that I remember. That was a very weird
Oh,
FPS.
God, I remember that.
Yeah, you can use
don't
you're
know
like an
that
angel, you
game.
use like god powers. You can turn people into salt and stuff. There's a level in hell. It's really terrifying stuff. Do you know what? It was that long ago. I remember Half-Life, but I don't remember much else.
Yeah. God, we should do a Requiem. I'm just Googled. We should do Requiem Avenging Angel on the pod because it is.
It is an FPS.
yeah.
It certainly missed the mark.
Absolutely. I mean, who's talking about Requiem Avenging Angel in
Right.
2024? Not me, that's for sure. But Matty, thank you very much for coming back.
Oh, thank you.
Telling us about Judge Dredd and also talking about Dredd versus Death. For the folks at home, what would you promote your links and anything you'd like to people to have a look at, I guess?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So you can find me on YouTube by looking for Stoked. That is the name of the channel. My handle on there is at Matty Stoked. Someone else has taken the Stoked handle, so that's what I've gone for. And yeah, if you're listening to this and you're interested in Judge Dredd, I've got 2 videos about Judge Dredd comics. One of them specifically about the Dark Judges, and one of them about the first epic, what I think is the first epic Judge Dredd story, which is a story called The Apocalypse War from 1985. Generally speaking, I talk about popular culture from the 90s and 2000s, the Y2K era. I like to talk about games, films, comics, really anything that takes my fancy. So If that sounds good to you, then follow me on there. I am on other socials, but I very rarely use them. So really, YouTube is the best place for me.
Nice. Snake, thank you for coming back for the end. Well, maybe not for now. There may be more police brutality games in future that we may.
I know what we're covering next, and it's not quite police brutality, but
sure,
it breaks the little trend I've been on, which I'm okay with. I'm not so dedicated to this Tony Hawk's combo.
Yeah, you weren't there like chumming at the bit. Like, I need to do more police games.
I need to see how many police brutality games in a row I can get for no real reason.
You're mapping them out on like a corkboard to see like what all the trends are, like how. But you're like trying to mindcast like the perfect police brutality game.
How do I convince James to give True Crime Streets of LA another go?
Oh yeah, that's the point as well. Yeah. Matt, we tried to play that game once for the pod, but I didn't have a good time with it. So I said to the guys, "Can we play something else?" And we ended up playing Red Faction.
Wow,
so,
it was very funny for me as well because I streamed it with like a really bad cold. Like we're doing this on the pod soon. I just find it really funny that I find it so funny the pod didn't happen in live. Just 2 hours of me coughing and going, "Yep, this game's more fun than I remember."
Suffering for it. So that would have been the Mitch episode, right? You did Red
Yeah,
Faction
that's right.
Yeah.
It was a game that Mitch pitched to us. I went away and I played, and I was like, I'm not really.
I don't like this.
It's partially why I haven't. It's why I haven't really pulled the trigger on doing a Rebellion series, and I think it's partially just down to the fact that when we did the Raven series just because it was interesting that they started making Doom games and then went all the way to kind of like today, but like you can only really do that story once, and then when we did the Free Radical series, it was just this really intriguing thing of cutting edge developer who like just got screwed at every single angle.
Yeah.
Rebellion Rebellion are like a really interesting developer, but there's no kind of like through line to a lot of their games outside of kind of what we were saying about the fact that kind of this naughty boy edge of like sort of they like 2000 AD, they like Alien versus Predator and stuff like that. I think the only thing that maybe, and I've talked about this a couple of times, we'll do an episode one day where we'll compare the 3 Aliens versus Predator games to each other to talk about like how the FPS sort of evolved between all of them. But other than that, like the Sniper Elites, I mean, they're kind of, there's nothing really interesting to glean out of them other than they're competent games. And I mean, the most interesting one I want to talk about is Never Dead, but we can't because it's not an FPS game nor a third-person shooter. So it's more of a character action thing.
One of my first like really notable followers on Twitter was a guy who was an absolute shooter for Never Dead, which always just stuck out to me as like, man, maybe I'm entering into a jank hole here if this is going to be the... I'm not saying that as a negative. It's like, these are people who are going to be interested in me. A shooter for Never Dead.
Yeah, like Never Dead in my head is like ultimate, like super best friends core. It's the game they never covered in regards to. It's just it's a really intriguing mess to kind of like pick apart at. Like even down to the fact that the most famous thing about it is that it was announced at the fucking cursed Konami 2010 E3 conference, where like there were just people up on stage and like they didn't have any idea what they were doing. And yeah, one of the games they showed off was Never Dead. So very weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, Snake, thank you for coming back. Is there anything you would like to point people towards?
Well, on my channel, there should be a video out. Well, there definitely will be
a
video
100%.
out on the very little known Russian tactics game Brigade E5, which that'll probably have been out for a good couple weeks. And I'm gonna start cracking on with a video on the Sonic Adventure era of games, playing them in weird ways and talking about vaguely related subjects. It'll be very exciting. It'll be very, very good. If you like Sonic, watch it. If you don't like Sonic, watch it twice. Maybe you'll come round.
What if I'm middling on Sonic?
Watch half of it or watch it at 2 times speed.
There we go.
That's truly the only way to watch Sonic videos, right? Fast.
Yeah, gotta go fast.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta go fast.
Yeah.
It's what I always do during Ramadan. By the way, folks, Simon James, you can follow wait, hold on. That was I don't feel I got enough of a pop at saying that I like to go faster in Ramadan.
That's a good joke.
I mean, it was a good joke, but I held back from making a joke.
Wow.
I fasted on the joke. Fuck that. Fucking cut that. Get rid of it. Wow.
Snake has left the call, which leaves me to say, hey folks, I've been James. You can follow me over on Twitter at Hotcider, HOTCYDER. If you like the podcast, leave us a review. If you really liked it, you can help support the production of more episodes over on Patreon over at Hotcider as well. Till next time, though, folks. I was going to say, is keep judging a good version of keep blasting for the end of the episode?
Yeah.
I like it. I'll give it a seal of approval.
Yeah.
Excellent. Keep judging, everybody.
Keep judging.
Keep judging.
There we go. That's how Judge Dredd would say it.
Perfect.
It's pretty good.
Keep judging.
Oh, dang it. This podcast has been made possible by Dylan Robinson, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Jesse Garasha, Kevin from Pixellet, Mouse, Twyla27, Valerie B, VG, and the Hot Cider support tier. If you'd like to help with the production of episodes and gain access to extra content, consider supporting over at patreon.com/Hot Cider. That's HOTCYDER. A special thanks to Max Coburn for the Bullet Time theme tune.